All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and this is another community-sponsored stream. Shout out to you guys. This was actually sponsored during the last community-sponsored stream, which was Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracula we got into last week. And you guys hit the 50 Super Chat goal in that stream and requested at the last second, there was a poll between Basil II, the Bulgar Slayer, Emperor of the Byzantine Empire, and Nikola Tesla, who ended up winning right at the last moment. You guys decided that you'd like to hear a stream on Nikola Tesla. So that is what we're going to be getting into today. And we're going to be covering a few different topics of Tesla because part of the problem is what exactly do we dive into? I read and watched, I think I watched 4 or 5 different documentaries on Tesla, and I did find a very good one. It's actually a PBS documentary, probably late 80s or early 90s, back when they actually made quality documentaries. And it is based off his autobiography. Nikola Tesla actually wrote an autobiography talking about his life. And we're going to watch sections of that, but this stream's really not just focusing on a historical overview of Tesla's life. We're going to hit that. We're going to try to summarize it in one of our sections today. But I think some of the more interesting questions, one that I couldn't find really anything discussing other than a few pieces regarding the Serbian Orthodox Church, is what was Tesla's relationship to the Orthodox Christianity? And we're going to be looking at that because obviously he had intimate connections. His father was an Orthodox priest. His grandfather was an Orthodox priest. His uncle was an Orthodox priest. And his 3 sisters all married Orthodox priests. So Tesla was not unfamiliar with the priesthood. And in fact, becoming an Orthodox priest is what his dad wanted him to become. And we'll get into it. It isn't until Tesla, at the age of 17, almost dies from cholera. And while essentially bedridden and his family fearing, his dad was actually brought to tears because they thought Nikola was going to die. And he told Tesla, while he was bedridden, that if he were to recover, and again, from everything that I was reading, it was believed that he was going to die, that he would allow him to go to the best polytechnic school, engineering institute possible instead of joining the priesthood. And Tesla, in his autobiography, described how this was essentially life-changing because it was the first time that his father actually supported his personal endeavors towards science and technology. And that's going to then be the catalyst for essentially the rest of his life. So we're going to get into his relationship to the Orthodox Church, which is quite interesting. I have a couple documents. Obviously, some of you are going to be familiar with the iconographic depiction of Tesla, which is not him being a saint. So there is no halo, but you have to recognize that Tesla is a Serbian national hero. And I'm going to make the case that what makes Tesla so unique compared to the Edisons of the world is that his Orthodox worldview that he was brought up in, I believe, now I haven't heard this being made anywhere else, but I believe actually influenced his discoveries and his inventions because he was not a reductionist. He truly was formed in a Orthodox worldview in which the energy essence distinction, the belief that there's vibrations, there's harmony, that there's an internal harmony to the cosmos itself. Again, the idea of logos. All of this was embedded in essentially our presuppositions of Tesla before he really, develops his alternating current motors and many of the inventions, the Wardenclyffe Tower, Tesla coils, all this different stuff. What I hadn't heard discussed before, and what I'm going to try to argue today, is that what makes Tesla so profound during the Second Industrial Revolution, because if you don't know, the Industrial Revolution kind of has 2 parts. The first part of the Industrial Revolution is these massive factories and being powered and driven by coal and oil. But the second Industrial Revolution occurs in the late 19th century, right during the time of Nikola Tesla. And it was a transition towards electricity and mass media. And so he is the ultimate figure of the second Industrial Revolution. And his worldview, as I said, compared to all the other competitors, is built on essentially an Orthodox metaphysic. Now, is he Orthodox Christian his entire life? I'm going to ask you guys to come up to your own conclusion. He did, especially after his entire lab got burned down in New York City, began to look further east and became kind of fond of Buddhism. But he always said that he believed that the highest two religions on earth was Buddhism and Christianity. And even the Orthodox priest, we have one of the articles we'll be looking at is actually from a Serbian Orthodox priest. He says that's probably one of the worst or the most negative aspects of Tesla's, spiritual worldview as it relates to orthodoxy is his promotion of the equality of Buddhism. But remember, he's existing at a time, not only during some of the committees and the festivals that go on in Chicago, but he lived during the time of the World Fair, which was the first time when Hindu gurus and Buddhist monks and all these people got together in Chicago. It really developed the idea of these world religions. And so Tesla, is he Orthodox? It's kind of hard to put your finger on, but I would say you can't understand Tesla without understanding the Orthodox formation he grew up in. Now, another aspect of today's stream that we're going to be focusing on is what happened to his work after his death. For those of you who don't know, Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, he was a MIT graduate and a PhD in electrical engineering. He was the man asked by the FBI to go and investigate Tesla's work upon dying in 1943. Now, Tesla lived to about 87 years old. Some of you probably know that he ended up dying. Relative poverty. He was certainly isolated. Lived a very lonely life, honestly, towards the end of his life. But upon dying, there's all these conspiracy theories. Because according to Tesla, when he was living in the New Yorker, which is where he died, a hotel in New York City, he had 80 trunks of notes, research materials, items that he had. But according to the Serbian museum, and all these works were given to his nephew, they received 60 trunks. Now, I watched an interesting documentary of the History Channel, which honestly, most of the History Channel is just total nonsense. Like, they have I saw like 2 or 3 videos on ancient aliens regarding Tesla, claiming he got all of his ideas from extraterrestrials. So it's really sad what's happened to the History Channel. They don't even make good content anymore. But one of the things that I did find interesting, I found an episode on the History Channel where an astrophysicist, a biographer of Nikola Tesla, and an investigative journalist go to the museum of Nikola Tesla in Belgrade, Serbia. And the museum curator there, who's also a PhD, I think, in the history of science, really shoo-shoos away the idea that the FBI may have taken some of his work. Now, according to Tesla, he died with 80 trunks of notes and material. According to the FBI, they recovered 30, but somehow 60 were sent to Serbia to his nephew, which are now present in the vaults of his museum. So, if we take Tesla at his word, 20 trunks of his material have gone missing. Now, according to the FBI, they were not that interested in his material. And according to John G. Trump, the uncle of Donald Trump, he looked over his research and found that is more philosophical and abstract, and there was nothing of use there. But this has led to many conspiracy theories because during that time and towards the end of his life, Nikola Tesla, he developed a technology called teleforce, which popularly referred in American culture as the death beam, which was essentially his belief that he could create a machine that could be an energy-directed weapon. Essentially, you could direct bolts of electricity towards any direction you want, and he claimed you could annihilate 10,000 soldiers 200 miles away, or 200 plus aircraft or naval ships 200 plus miles away. And he believed that this technology would actually end wars, because if the whole world had this technology, they would all be able to defend themselves. Now, remember, he dies in 1943. 1941 in December is Pearl Harbor. That's when the U.S. joins World War II. So towards the end of his life, the entire Western world was in chaos. It was in war. And he apparently had contacted the British Empire. I mean, I guess the king at that time, not essentially the empire, was on the decline by the 20th century. But he contacted British royalty and was offering this technology, this teleforce, this death beam, to them for $30 million. $30 million, which is a lot of money back then. And they ended up declining because he wanted the money before he would send the technology. We do know that he then reached out to Russia and the Soviet Union to potentially offer this weapon to them, which has led conspiracy theorists to believe that's why the U.S. government, because he tried to first give it to the U.S. government and they thought it was totally fallacious, that it was, never going to work, that he was basically an old crazy man. And some believe that maybe the documents, for if you were to trust John G. Trump, that there was really nothing in the documents when he was to go over them. Maybe Tesla left things out in the notes that he had to be present for actually to create this thing and make it work. Others claim that it was all there and that the U.S. government essentially stole 20 trunks of notes from Tesla, and they've used that for their counter defense against ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons and all that type of stuff. And some claim that the U.S. government has already implemented and utilized and built some of Tesla's technology. So we're going to get into some of this stuff because it's interesting that the Trump family pops up regarding Nikola Tesla. So we're going to touch on, Serbian space lasers. We're going to touch on all that different stuff today. So let me do a quick little opening monologue to discuss what exactly tonight's stream is about. We're not focusing on Tesla just as an inventor. We're not even focusing on a detailed examination of all his technologies and his inventions. We're not even focusing on all the conspiracy theories about free energy, which I do believe to be the case. But we're really focusing on the birth of the modern technological world, because symbolically, Tesla stands at the precipice, at the dividing point between the old industrial world, the older modern world of the early 19th century, and the world that we now live in, an electrified, global, mass media world, all of which is dependent upon the technology that Tesla created. So Tesla is one of the strangest figures of modernity because he's born, as I said, in a Serbian Orthodox household. His mother was illiterate, from what we understand, and yet at the same time, she had an incredible memory. She could memorize entire Serbian epics, of which she instilled in Nikola Tesla. This is believed why some of his photographic memory was potentially developed by his mother. Now, he claims it was genetic. He claims that the lineage, the ancestral lineage of his mother was replete with genius, and that even though his mother was never formally educated in any way, she was incredibly useful at building things, at creating things, at memorizing, and that she influenced Tesla's formation. Now, being born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and today what we would consider modern-day Croatia is where he was born, that just think about this. Think about the life of Tesla. He's born in a, let's say, not the most prosperous place in the Western world at the time. He is born with genius, and it was known early in his life. Now, he did have a bit of the tism, right? He had some very unique characteristics to himself, but his family recognized that he had genius. His dad was pushing him towards the priesthood, and he was born even during a lightning storm. Now, there's this whole legend, according to his family, that being born during this lightning storm, the midwife said, oh my gosh, essentially he's going to be a son of darkness. And his mother responded, no, he will be a man of light. Again, this is sort of a mythic legend, although we are believe that this is actually the case. There is, sources citing from his family that this was the case. But lightning was going off all around him, lightning and thunder, while he was born. And he's raised on the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the frontier where it's very multi-ethnic. This is the beginning of the rise of a Serbian identity. Eventually this is going to become Yugoslavia. We talked about Tito. We talked about the Kosovo War previously. So it gives you a little bit of a historical continuity of that region in the Balkans. But he nearly dies of cholera at the age of 17. Now, he knew when he was a very young teenager that he wanted to pursue the sciences. The first time he was even introduced to the idea of electricity and machine engineering, he knew that this was what he wanted to do. But his family was pushing him towards the priesthood. Now, as I told you, upon his bedridden existence, his dad agrees that if he is to survive, he will help him go and pursue his dreams. Once he begins to recover, Tesla talked about how he began to read Mark Twain. Mark Twain. And this is one of the most interesting things about Tesla, is to just look at the historical trajectory of his life. Now, why am I bringing up Mark Twain? Because Mark Twain becomes one of his better friends when he comes to America. Think about this. Tesla's born in, again, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, not exactly wealthy to any significant degree. Men at that time, you either joined the military or joined the priesthood, of which his family was clearly joining the priesthood. He comes across a pamphlet or book or magazine discussing Niagara Falls, and we're talking about early teenager, he dreams of how he could utilize Niagara Falls to be a conduit of electricity, to be essentially a hydroelectric plant, which he does later in his life. He actually accomplishes this, and this is what ends the AC-DC war between him and Thomas Edison. But think about this. Tesla then eventually, once he recovers from cholera, goes to these polytechnic schools, becomes, number one in his class. Then he gets a gambling addiction, and this is what we get from his autobiography. He actually ends up failing on some of his studies because he became so obsessed with card games and various gambling games that he lost a significant amount of the money he had. He gets back into school, he refocuses his life, and eventually he creates the AC motor. Then he comes to the United States with, according to one source that I read, with 46 cents in his pocket. This is truly the American dream. Tesla arrives in New York City with 46 cents. Immediately, because he had a letter of recommendation from an associate of Thomas Edison, he goes to Edison's company and essentially ask for a job. When they read the letter of recommendation, they begin to hire him, and immediately they see his genius and how he's able to help them and develop their, at that time, DC current. So anyways, he then works overtime for Edison, who claimed to Tesla, at least this is the legend, this is what we hear from Tesla, that he believed Edison was going to pay him $50,000 to get all these different machines working and fixed, which he spends like weeks doing, working all this overtime. And then upon completing all the work, Edison tells him, oh, you just don't get American humor. Never pays him for it. Tesla then quits his job with Edison and ends up digging holes in the ground for the cables for the direct current of Edison to work in New York City. So imagine, so now he's literally digging holes. He has no prestige at all. Eventually, his inventions, he gets in touch with Westinghouse. They ended up working with him. He becomes massively successful. In fact, he even had a royalty deal with Westinghouse where he would receive $2.50 for every single horsepower that came out of his AC motors. Now, eventually, Westinghouse, because they become financially fraught, they end up breaking this agreement. And Tesla even agreed to break it because they were going to go out of business if they didn't. But if he were to maintain the $2.50, which today is roughly like anywhere between $50 and $90 per horsepower, he would have become more wealthy than Rockefeller during his lifetime. Tesla would have been the wealthiest man in the world. And even though that agreement was broken up, during the time in which that agreement was broken up, Tesla already became essentially a millionaire. He was incredibly wealthy, and he was in the most elite circles. And so imagine that. He goes from the Austro-Hungarian Empire to becoming an associate of Edison, quitting under Edison, because when he comes, he believed Edison to be one of the geniuses, the American geniuses that he wanted to work with. Gives up on Edison and then goes on to work for Westinghouse, becomes one of the most famous people in America. And then, again, as I said, becomes friends with Mark Twain, a man who he was reading on his deathbed back in Croatia. Goes and builds his Wardenclyffe Tower in Colorado Springs, works on his free energy. And it's J.P. Morgan who then tells him that they're going to fund his work to build free energy, to be able to send essentially radio signals across the Atlantic, of which he had patented all the technology. And then an Italian man, Marconi, ends up stealing his patents and goes ahead and creates the first radio transmission across the Atlantic. Even in the U.S., when Marconi tried to patent his radio, they were declined because they're essentially mimics of Tesla's already existing patents. And Tesla at the time was so successful, he said, oh, Marconi's a good man. Let him do what he wills, even though he knew he was stealing his technology. Now, J.P. Morgan then backs Marconi, pulls the funds from Tesla right at the height of his research for free energy. And the Wardenclyffe Tower then becomes destroyed. All of his works, he's forced to return back to New York City, and essentially for the rest of his life lives by himself in hotels. And for the last 10 years of his life, essentially after Edison dies, I think in 1935, he kind of catapults to the public domain in America. And Westinghouse, because they felt bad for the man, because he had all these patents, all these inventions, and somehow he went from the height of popularity and wealth and opulence to having nothing, they decided that they'd pay for his and fit the bill for his hotel room and board for the rest of his life, which they did. And towards the end of his life, as I said, he wanted to sell the Teleforce weapon, which no country apparently was willing to pay him for. But imagine in 1943, 1942, if he was to receive $30 million. I don't even know what that translates today. Someone in the chat can figure that out. But an incredible sum of money. And so we're talking about a man whose inventions are in every single modern city around the world. Every electrical grid runs on Tesla's technology. Every factory, every appliance, every server. Again, the entire modern world is dependent upon what Tesla put forth. And so symbolically, Tesla stands at the crossroads of orthodoxy, of modernity. And this is one of the things I think he was shaped so much by the forces of modernity. That's kind of why he, loses touch with some of his Orthodox heritage, or even comes up with a more eclectic spiritual worldview, of which some people in the New Age have adopted, right? And promoted his idea within the New Age. So he stands at a time of industrial capitalism in which people made so much money off his work, and yet it's the same people that take the money away. When JP Morgan decides to no longer fund Tesla, he convinces all the other investors to not invest in Tesla. And this gets into a conspiracy theory because, again, this is at the height of his free energy research. There's a famous quote attributed to JP Morgan that when Tesla described, again, Marconi's radio waves have now crossed the Atlantic, and he's being credited with the first one inventing all this stuff despite stealing it from Tesla. And JP Morgan says, but where do we put the meter? How do we make money off this free energy? Because in Colorado Springs, he was already demonstrating how he could light light bulbs by just touching the ground. And of course, the whole point was to not make money. The whole point was to give free energy. If all these different places around the world built some of these Tesla coils, that they would be able to do the exact same thing. And that's why JP Morgan, at least from my opinion, not only pulled his funding, but convinced every major investor to no longer fund any of Tesla's projects. And that's why essentially for the last 20 years of his life, he had no money to pursue all of his inventions. And he exists at a time during the Second Industrial Revolution that's filled with scientific utopianism. In many ways, it's a form of technological mythology that these people were living in. But here's the difference. Tesla provided the technology to actually make it happen. And so Tesla becomes fascinating, I would argue, philosophically, because his instincts resonate with an Orthodox worldview. We're talking about invisible energies, the energy essence distinction of Orthodoxy. That energies are the structure to physical reality. He was not a reductionist. He was not a materialist. In fact, that's one of the things that differentiated him from other competing men at his time as these inventors, because they were so focused on these Enlightenment ideals that they were coming at the field of electricity and free energy and all this different stuff, alternative currents, from a very reductionist, materialistic point of view. Now, for Tesla, he was viewing it essentially, I would argue, in terms of a Orthodox theology that he grew up in. He understood the universe as filled with cosmic harmony. You guys have heard him talk about the significance of the numbers 3, 6, and 9. And in many ways, when he depicted the relationship to these numbers, he depicted it as a triangle, with 9 being sort of almost, if we're going to exaggerate the symbolism, as God the Father, and 3 and 6 as the two hands of God, the two other lower elements of the triangle, and that he believed this was the structure of the world, of the universe, of creation, and that he argued for essentially a logos-oriented universe, that there was deep metaphysical order that just had to be perceived and understood, and that we then could tap into. He was obsessed with the idea of transcendence. He was, as I said, not materialistic and very much in favor of the idea of psychic powers, spiritual realities, angels, demons. And so Tesla increasingly redirected, I would argue, the metaphysical instincts of his Orthodox upbringing towards technology, towards science, and towards essentially modern progress. In many ways, Tesla represents a spiritual transformation of the modern West itself, a civilization still, in a sense, haunted by Protestant Christian metaphysics, but increasingly seeking transcendence through the Enlightenment promises of technology, energy, and scientific power. So Tesla, his life is almost mythological. I mean, born during a lightning storm, his mother, who he had a very intimate relationship with, claiming that, no, he's going to be a man of light. He's going to do great things. He had visions of rotating magnetic fields. Even as a child, he had this unique ability to envision things and put machines and pieces together in his mind. As I said, he had a photographic memory, which was the case from his earliest years. It was noted by his family. He created giant electrical storms in Colorado. He became one of the most famous men in America. He was in the most elite circles in America. He was immaculate in the way he dressed. This was one of the interesting things that I found looking into his life is during the prominence, and really this was throughout his life, but during the height of his prominence, everyone noted how immaculate he dressed. He wore white gloves. He wore 5-piece suits. He had a top hat. And the women at the time, he was a hot item. They even referred to him as the most eligible bachelor in New York City. However, because he did kind of have the tism, he lived during the rise of germ theory, which he used at one point in his life. I was reading that he used a microscope to analyze, I think it was water that he was drinking in New York City, and saw these microbes, and it freaked him out. And so he was very much a germphobe. One story claims that every time he entered a building, he had to walk around it before entering it. So he had some OCD, autistic-like dispositions, if we will. But he actually was pursued by multiple high prominent women. But he claims that he chose essentially a life of asceticism because he believed that sex would diminish his mental powers. And so sort of correlate to a sort of Orthodox asceticism, if you will, but it's not so much as a returning or a repentful turning towards Christ and a voluntary suffering. He did it essentially because he believed that sex would diminish his creative abilities. But again, incredible. He literally dreamed of a wireless world that we now live in. I'm sure many of us right now are on Wi-Fi or using cellular data, all of which is built off Tesla's inventions. He predicted an age of global communication, which we now live in. And then dying alone in a hotel during World War II, and this huge question mark about what happened to his work. And essentially, still to this day, no real explanation for what we believe to be the 20 missing trunks of his work. So immediately after his death, the U.S. government seizes his papers. This is on request of the FBI. And as I said, it's Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, who is commissioned to read his papers to understand what they're saying and find out what is useful and what is not. According to John Trump, none of it was really useful. It was all too abstract and philosophical. And basically, he claims they took really nothing from his trunks. But wartime officials believe that investigating his work was absolutely preeminent because they believe that he did have the Teleforce weapon, and they knew that he had already offered it not only to the British, but to the Soviet Union. Now, at that time, they were all allies. These were the Allied powers against the Axis during World War II. And I would assume, based on all of my research and prep for today, that the U.S. government, knowing what the U.S. government does, knowing that other people claim to have seen the successful experiments of Tesla regarding these things, that they absolutely seized these technologies, and knowing that he had offered them to the Soviet Union would have absolutely perked the ears of the U.S. intelligence apparatus. So, however, we have no conclusive evidence on what happened to him. So what did Tesla actually leave behind? We don't know. And even the 60 trunks that were sent to his museum in Belgrade, you have to have special permission to even see it. And one of the documentaries I watched, again, mentioning the History Channel of the astrophysicist, the Tesla biographer, and the investigative journalist who go to this museum, the gentleman who ran it acted like there's no way that the FBI took anything, that they have everything that Tesla wrote. And when they asked if they could see anything, the only thing the museum, now these people came from the United States to Serbia, knowing that this was a television crew. I thought this was a bit strange, at least perked my curiosity, that the museum curator only allowed them to see the front page of the document that he supposedly sent to the Soviet Union regarding his Teleforce, his death beam. But when the Americans asked, can we see the signatory page? Did Tesla sign this? Because we would just like to see proof that he actually created this document. The museum curator would not let them see that. He claimed they had to get governmental permission and all this different stuff just to see if Tesla actually wrote it. So even then, there's a bit of ambiguity that is it possible that these were forged? Is it possible that him offering the technology to the Soviet Union was done as a preeminent pretext by the U.S. government to extract his information and his technology? We don't know. So tonight, we're going to examine Tesla's Orthodox background, his inventions, the war of currents between him and Edison, of which Edison lost. I mean, we're going to see, I hate to even show the video, but I'm sure some of you guys are aware of the fact that Edison electrocuted animals like live in New York City to demonstrate the danger of alternative currents. So the problem with Edison's direct current is that upon long distances, the power diminished further and further and further. So it required massive insulated copper wires, whereas Tesla's alternative currents could maintain power at long distances. And so what Tesla did to lose the monopoly, because he was a incredibly successful American businessman and inventor. I mean, he invented the incandescent light bulb. That's his claim to fame, of which caused Tesla to admire him. But realizing that Tesla's alternative currents may threaten his energetic monopoly in America, he executed animals live. And there's the famous example of the elephant. It's a female elephant, I believe in New Jersey, that they hooked copper shoes to and sent, I forget how many volts of electricity of alternating current through it and killed it in like 10, 15 seconds. And he did it to horses. And he, according to what I read, there are children that claim that Edison paid them to bring dogs, maybe stray dogs that they found around the neighborhood, to Edison so that, again, he could do these public executions of animals to scare the public of alternative currents. So we're going to get into the war of currents, the Wardenclyffe Tower in Colorado Springs, his wireless energy, again, the FBI investigation in him, and I found a video, it's a 5-minute video of John Trump, actually, I think it's from the 80s, being interviewed about reading Tesla's papers and, again, claiming that there's really nothing there. And then looking at some of the competing conspiracy theories around Tesla's death, some people believe that he was actually killed. We don't know exactly. Now, Tesla wasn't in great health because about 4 to 5 years before he died, he was actually hit by a car. It broke 3 of his ribs. The guy was already in his 80s. Imagine that. An 80-year-old man gets hit by a taxi in New York City, breaks 3 of his ribs. He walked with a limp for a while, and essentially he never fully recovered. That's what at least that's what I came across in reading. And so he was never in great health, but it appears he never lost his mind, because the president of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt, actually set a meeting up with Tesla finally regarding the Teleforce weapon, the death beam. It was supposed to be in early January of 1943. And just a few days before this meeting, where he was potentially going to present his research and offer this weapon for money to the United States, he passed away. So some people have speculated he may have been killed. Some people speculated that he was dead 3 days before the actual day in which his death is stated to have occurred, and that people needed those 3 days to go through all his materials because there was stuff stolen. For example, when people arrived at his body, it's believed that someone had already gone through his safe. He had this massive green metal safe that supposedly had some important things in there, although when it was opened after, again, the public knew of his death, there wasn't really anything of importance there. Some people speculate that the FBI and potentially John Trump had already acquired anything of importance that was already there. So ultimately, this stream is about something deeper than just the historical overview of Tesla's life. We're looking at what technology he invented and what it does to our civilization, and how his Orthodox worldview influenced many of his inventions, and why I think that differentiated him from all the other Western inventors who, going down the promise of the Enlightenment, were reductionists, were materialists, and often atheists who rejected the spiritual word, all of which Tesla was not. He was not an atheist. He believed in God. Again, it's debated how much it was a Orthodox understanding, but we'll get into that. And he was not a materialist. He absolutely believed in non-physical forces, and he was not a reductionist. He believed in complex systems. Again, he believed in a sort of metaphysical underlying structure, and he claimed that that's what he was tapping into, is the metaphysical operations that unify the universe itself. So that's all of which we're going to be getting into today. Smash that like, guys. Thank you all for being here. Again, this is a community-sponsored stream. Shout out to you all. We're going to be trying to raise funds today for another community-sponsored stream. So if we hit the 50 Super Chat goal here on YouTube, when I get back from Montana, we can dive into whether it be Basil, the Bulgar Slayer, or the Norman Conquest of England. That was another popular topic. So if we can reach the Super Chat goal today, you guys can decide the next community sponsor stream, of which you guys sponsored this one. So major thank you to you all. Before we get into some of the videos and all the other material, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you would like to join our men's group over at the Logos Academy, we would love to have you. Right here, you can see we are voting on the next study topic that we're going to be diving into. And you can see it's actually fairly close in the Academy. We're looking between the Book of Enoch, the history of the Byzantine Empire, ultimate overview of Orthodox theology, and the history of occultism and Western esoteric traditions. The guys, again, this is a men's only community. Sorry, ladies. But we just went through the Orthodox survival course, of which all those videos are right here for anybody who'd be interested. Going over the intellectual history presented by Father Seraphim Rose. But we are now deciding what the next topic at hand, and it seems like it's going to be either be the Book of Enoch, which we're going to go through from an Orthodox perspective, or basically a graduate seminar on Orthodox theology and moving through that. So if any guys out there would be interested in joining us, we'd love to have you. Also, if anybody has not got the best book, being a Christian critique, essentially an Orthodox critique of transhumanism, you can get author-signed copies at my website right here. Use that link, and I will ship them out as soon as I can. Also, if you prefer a cheaper copy, just search Return to Babylon over on Amazon, and the book should pop up. Also, if you have a topic that you would like to sponsor, we have the last sponsored stream I have is going to be Monday, and we're going to be diving into technologies of mind control. We're looking at MK Ultra, all different types of ways in which the government has tried to manipulate people and done research on that. After Monday, I am totally out of sponsored streams. This is the first time I would say in probably a year and a half that I've actually caught up on all the sponsored streams. So if you have a topic that you would like me to dive into, feel free to sponsor a stream. As I say, normally take about a day and a half to 2 days to do research on these things. But just purchase through the website, and then I will reach out to you through email and get clarification on what it is that you'd like me to research. And then if you're interested in some peptides, any of you guys and women out there who are wanting to optimize your health, do go to Level Up Health. They have some of the best high-quality peptides, of which I use BPC 157. Big fan of it. You can see they have tons. They are very high quality. That's one of the reasons why they're more expensive. But if you use promo code COTEL, C-O-T-E-L, you can get a discount on those. And also, if you're looking for any Orthodox items, be it prayer ropes, study Bibles, incense, whatever it may be, check out orthodoxdepot.com. It's an Orthodox Christian company here in the Midwest, United States, and use promo code COTEL, C-O-T-E-L, and you'll also get a discount on those as well. So, all right. So let's dive into our stream here. And actually, before we even get into it, let me check up with the chat here. One of the things that I found that I want to show you, but before we do, this is one of the only audio recordings of Tesla. Now, we can't, I even used AI to try to figure this out. If this is authenticated, we know for a fact this is Tesla's voice. I can't get confirmation on that, but this comes from a society that supports Nikola Tesla and free energy and all this stuff. And its claim is that this is one of the only voice recordings we have of Nikola Tesla. So I'm going to play that in just a moment. But before I do, let me catch up with the chat real quick. Victor Ziegler throws in a generous 20 and says, Codal Crew assemble. Yes, that is right. Codal Crew assemble. Again, a major shout out to the Codal Crew because it's you guys who sponsored today's stream. So thank you so much, Victor Ziegler. And then he throws a generous $55 for 55K. That is right. We just passed 55K subs here on the YouTube channel. So very excited. We're slowly making our way towards 100,000. But, you know, slow and steady wins the race is what they say. I'd prefer it to be a little bit quicker, but it is what it is. So thank you very much, Victor Ziegler. Really appreciate it. And Jordan Johnson. Shout out to Jordan Johnson. That is a member of the Logos Academy. He says, here's to adding to the Pocket Square collection and 55K. Well, thank you very much. I hope you like the Pocket Square. I'm actually sporting a new jacket today. I've always wanted like a dark burgundy sports coat, blazer. Found one and just got it tailored, so the sleeves are perfect. And yes, I do have a matching Pocket Square for the pants here. So you can see always, just like Tesla, you got to be impeccable with your fashion here. So I'm taking my inspiration from Tesla, as we'll get into today. But thank you very much, Jordan Johnson, for the support, man. Always need more Pocket Squares. Do appreciate it. And Kelly throws in 10, no comment. Thank you very much, Kelly. Really appreciate the support. Shout out to Lockstep. He said, received your book in the mail this morning. Thank you. Can't wait to start it. Well, thank you, Lockstep, for being a supporter. As you know, in the last stream, I gifted, although Vess never hit me up, I was going to send out 2 books because we achieved our super chat goal last stream. I did ship out Lockstep's book, and so I'm glad that you received it. I hope you enjoy the book, and let me know what you think of it. Nathaniel throws in 5, says, hey, what's up with having a bit of the tism? Hey, there again, if Tesla can do it, he can show that you can be massively successful and have the tism. Although his tism probably did not help with his business relations. I would say that is one of the more common criticisms of Nikola Tesla, is that he was actually very captivating and somewhat charismatic, especially during the height of his popularity. But after his lab got burned down and he decided he needed to get out of the busyness and the compactness of New York City, he moved out to Colorado Springs, where he then pursued the rest of his research. But it's believed that if he was a little bit more personable, especially with some of his investors, he probably could have been more successful. But he was very headstrong. That was one of the things that came across quite clear, is that he was convinced that the things that he invented would work. And he demonstrated that they did work. So some people perceived him as very egotistical. Others perceived him as very soft and quiet. So I guess it depended on what mood you caught Tesla in. But he did have the tism. He did have a sort of antisocial stigma, of which some people believe it's because of the death of his brother. He actually witnessed his brother fall off a horse when he was a small child, which essentially horrified him. And according to, again, the stories that I was reading about him, he became much more quiet and more inward and reflective after the death of his brother, which sort of haunted him. I mean, he was scarred. He was a very young boy when he saw his brother die in front of him. So some people claim that the reason why he was more of a recluse had to do with witnessing the death of his brother. Now, we can't confirm that. And as we said, some of his behavioral patterns, he was a bit of a germaphobe. He had to walk around buildings. And this is why we don't even know if he ever had sex. Now, he claims that he was voluntarily ascetic, and in his autobiography, he says at the age of 40, he cut his sexuality off. But before the age of 40, as I said, during his 30s, now, like when he was 35 years old, this dude was incredibly wealthy and one of the most popular people in America. He had actresses throwing themselves at him. I forget the woman's name. I wasn't familiar, but she was a French actress in America and considered one of the most famous actresses in the U.S. And she had a thing for Tesla. He in his autobiography actually wrote how he was annoyed because she would come visit him and throw herself at him. And he said it distracted him from his work. And eventually this is what caused him to cut his sexuality off. So essentially Tesla was the hero of the incels, if you will. But we don't know for sure if he actually had sex. Again, he was entertaining multiple women in his 30s. It's believed because of him being a germaphobe that he never actually engaged in sexuality with them, but we don't know for sure. Masterick throws in 5, says, forgot to ask this before, but why do you use nicotine pouches, and are these reasons you think others should use them? No, I am not going to tell anyone to do anything. Nicotine is addictive. If you want to know why I began using nicotine pouches, I can explain, and if you want, if you use nicotine, right, I do not want to convince anyone to use nicotine because it is addictive. And if you use too much, it can be detrimental. It can, increase heart rhythm and all this different stuff. But if you do use nicotine, go check out my affiliate link. It's in the video description. Get Alps. They are the best nicotine pouches, and they even have these new drifter flavors. This is watermelon kiwi. Very, very good. The reason why I started to use nicotine, and again, this is not advice to anyone out there. So do not take what I'm saying, meaning that you need to go buy nicotine. But I was reading research on dementia and Alzheimer's, and there's a lot of interesting research on nicotine use actually preventing the onset of dementia to a significant degree. From at least one article I read was like in the 70-some percentile reduction. So pretty significant reduction. And it does, it is a natural, cognitive booster, but it's a nootropic, if you will. So I found it to be useful for me sitting here doing research and reading for long periods of time, but it is addictive. This is not advice. I am not telling anyone to do it. Those are just my own personal reasons for why I got into it. So, shout out to Octavian for becoming a new Codal Crew member. Shout out to you, brother. Thank you very much. And if we have anyone out there who's feeling a little bit generous, again, blessed Ascension to you guys. Yesterday was the Feast of the Ascension. If anyone out there is feeling a little bit generous this Friday, please gift some Codal Crew memberships. I know the chat loves that, and I got new members videos up on YouTube for anyone who has a membership. So if that tickles your fancy, if you'd like to get a little congratulations and thanks from the chat, do give some Codal Crew memberships. Some guy online, too much, throws in 10. That's a good name. Shout out to the Logos Bros. All Schizo Bros have a Tesla fascination phase. Yeah, it's true. That's true. Serbian Slav Squad, been a Codal Crew member for 9 months, says, as a Serbian electrical engineer and a human being, Tesla is one of my role models. Tesla dabbed in whatever, but he was ortho. Congrats on 55K DPH. Thank you very much, Serbian Slav Squad. Yeah, and, he was very close, and we're going to get into he actually spent time with a modern-day saint. So Saint Nikolai Velimirovich, a Serbian saint, was actually personal friends with Nikola Tesla, and I'm going to go over that today in today's stream, is that there's a brief description of the time when Saint Nikolai came to the United States to spend time with Tesla, and Tesla showed him all his inventions. I think he took him out to Colorado Springs. And so there clearly Tesla was still engaged with Orthodox clergy. As I said, all 3 of his sisters married Orthodox priests. His father was a priest. His grandfather was a priest. And his mother's brother, his uncle, was a priest. So the majority of men that Tesla was related to were all Orthodox priests. And Octavian throws in 10, says, for Jenny's tailored clothing fund. Thank you very much, Octavian. I appreciate that, my man. And let me just check the dono chat real quick to see if anything came in over there. All right. Looks like we are all caught up. Okay. So let's now get into some of our sources for today. This was one, it really has no real meaning other than this is the only evidence I could find of Tesla's voice. I searched all over the internet to find like a video of Tesla because during the current wars, Edison filmed the electrocution of the elephant, right? So they did have video during the life of Tesla. However, I couldn't find anything specific. I couldn't find any audio except this. So I'm going to play it real quick for you guys. And forgive the music. I could not find a version without the music. I wanted no music, but there's like a slow, soft music playing underneath it. But from what I could find, this is potentially the voice of Nikola Tesla.
Electric power is everywhere present in unlimited quantities. It can drive the world's machinery without the need of coal, oil, gas, or any other fuel. This new power for the driving of the world's machinery will be derived from the energy which operates the universe, the cosmic energy.
So that's all I could find. Yes, JFB, yes, it was film, not digital video. I just meant as a video, meaning not a still photograph. That's what I meant by video. I'm not saying it was digital 1080p video. Yes, it was film. I do agree. But anyways, so that's the only evidence we have of his voice. This is the best documentary I could find. This is a PBS documentary, either from the late 80s or the early 90s. We're going to watch sections of it, especially talking about him winning the current wars with Edison and his friendship with Mark Twain. But before we get into that, or this one, it discusses, this is from the Redacted YouTube channel, talking about free energy and maybe why they silenced Nikola Tesla. We're going to watch that later, as well as if we want to, this is a video I found on his 10 greatest inventions. It was a good overview of those inventions. We may or may not watch that video. This is one of everyone's favorite astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, basically dismissing many of the claims of Tesla regarding free energy and what he claimed he was inventing. So no surprise there, because according to the official U.S. government, his schematics and his theories were non-effective. They didn't work. And in this little clip, which I don't even know if I can play the video, I was going to hope maybe I can play the audio without the video, because this is on the JRE Clips channel. I assume it's going to get taken down or copyrighted. But I would like to play the little audio of Neil deGrasse Tyson basically shoo-shooing. Yeah, hold on. Shoo-shooing the idea that Tesla was actually able to create free energy. So, again, it's hard to take it seriously coming from a man who believes that a man can get breast implants and now be considered a woman, and all his social justice advocacy. So it's hard to take a man of that caliber seriously, but we will potentially discuss that. And also this video, which is probably the most concise overview of his life. So we're going to watch this, and then I have a study guide I put together for today. So in the study guide, it has a little bit of an overview of his life, which this video is going to cover. I thought this video would be a little bit more interesting than the study guide. But in the study guide, I have an overview of his life, his inventions that are important today, which the other video will also talk about, and then his ideas that resonate with Orthodox theology and the conspiracy theories regarding John Trump and what happened. Because as you can see here, this is just some of the other stuff just to show you all what I got. This right here is from a Serbian PhD, Bogan Labardic, and this is him presenting to a faculty of Orthodox theology at the University of Belgrade, talking about Tesla, in which he's trying to make the claim that he may have had some non-Christian ideas, especially regarding Buddhism, but other aspects of his life, and even has some quotes insinuating that his Orthodox formation did play a factor in his life. This is the icon of him in the Church of the Transfiguration of God. That's in Bosnia. So this is, you can see he has no halo. So this is not canonizing him. He is not a saint. He is a Serbian national hero, and he, from the Serbs, they do support him and part of their Orthodox heritage. Now, this is Saint Nikolai Velimirovich, who he was personal friends with and who came to the U.S. Now, he is a canonized saint in the Serbian Orthodox Church. And so right here is a little overview on the meeting between Saint Nikolai Velimirovich and Nikola Tesla. And we're going to read a little bit of this, talking about Tesla bringing him to his laboratory and showing him what he was working on. And this we'll get into regarding the conspiracy theories. This is the missing papers. And this is a little overview of what happened to Tesla's papers and Dr. John G. Trump's investigation into them. And then we'll watch this video here of John Trump. I believe this is like the mid-'80s, talking about what he saw during his investigation of Tesla. So that gets you a little bit of speed on what we're going to be covering today. Also, this is a poem that Tesla wrote in the 1920s called Fragments of Olympian Gossip. I was going to read this to you guys because I'm sure most of you have never even heard of the poem that Tesla wrote. And so we're going to read that, and just also some of the people that are going to be prominent today. Thomas Edison, inventor of the incandescent light bulb. Becomes arch enemy of Tesla, if you will. Marconi, who steals Tesla's patents and becomes the man who, is the first one to use radio frequency to send the letter S across the Atlantic. Even though when he tried to patent it, he was rejected by the U.S. And it isn't until 5 months after Tesla dies that he wins his lawsuit against Marconi. So Tesla, living isolated in poverty, essentially only being supported by Westinghouse funding his room and board at the New Yorker. 5 months after he's dead, he finally gets the recognition he wanted, that Marconi was stealing his technology and stealing his patents. Westinghouse, this is probably one of the only men that truly believed and supported Tesla. And then we have J.P. Morgan, of which you can see this massive nose on J.P. Morgan. I was diving into a little bit about J.P. Morgan. Very interesting. He was a hideous man. And what you can't tell in this photo is that his nose was purple. He had some problem. Let me put nose in here. Nose. He had rhinophrenia, which caused his nose to be excessively large. And it actually had a purple hue, of which made him kind of scary to look at. Now, he was a large, stout man, and he basically used that to his benefit. So his social and professional self-confidence were too well established to be undermined by his affliction. It appeared as if he dared people to meet him squarely and not shrink from the sight, asserting the force of his character over the ugliness of his face. Morgan smoked dozens of cigars per day and favored large Havana cigars, dubbed Hercules clubs. Now, it is Morgan that actually goes back and essentially brings Tesla to poverty. Says it's Morgan that was funding his free energy research. It was Morgan that wanted him to be the first one to send a message across the Atlantic. Of course, Marconi ends up winning that race by stealing Tesla's patents. And because Marconi was going to sell the technology and license it to a much cheaper rate, and J.P. Morgan was not fond of the fact that Tesla took his money, which was somewhere equivalent to like $4 to $5 million, took his money to build his free energy system. He said, as I quoted before, where do we put the meter? Well, Tesla said, there is no meter. We're giving electrical energy free to the world. And he immediately shut down the project and had all of Tesla's inventions and constructions there in Colorado Springs destroyed. So you can imagine, twice in Tesla's life is his entire laboratory destroyed. Once in New York City due to a fire, which Again, a lot of question marks. According to Tesla, he believed that it was sabotage. He believed somebody did it on purpose, destroyed all his notes, all the stuff that he had on the fourth floor of that building where his laboratory was, and essentially had to restart. And then it happened again due to JP Morgan pulling his support. And so we're probably not going to get into this. The documentary kind of touches on it a little bit. But again, imagine Tesla reading Mark Twain while bedridden with cholera, almost about to die, and then ends up becoming friends with Mark Twain when he moves to America. I mean, that's what I mean by Tesla's life is actually pretty incredible, that he dreamed of using Niagara Falls for hydroelectricity, which he did. He dreamed of moving to America, which he did. He became a U.S. citizen. He believed that Mark Twain was one of the best American, not just satirists, but writers. Ends up befriending Mark Twain. And it becomes independently successful and then loses it all and essentially dies in almost obscurity. So a little bit sad, but an incredible mythical story, if you will. So again, this is a little bit on Mark Twain if you guys weren't familiar. So with that, let's watch this little bit overview of the life of Nikola Tesla, and then we'll get a little bit into the study guide and we'll watch some more videos. So here we go.
Tesla was born on the 10th of July 1856 in modern-day Croatia. His mother came from a line of inventors and had an incredible memory, being able to memorize the entirety of Serbian epic poems, and so she trained her son with exercises in memorization. As time went on, Tesla was known to have an eidetic memory, later speaking 8 different languages, which he credited to his mother's efforts in his youth. At the age of 5, Tesla witnessed the death of his older brother in a horse riding accident, the image of which would stay with him for his entire life. After this, Tesla began experiencing flashes of light and images, making it hard to separate reality from his imagination. He claimed his inventions would come to him in these flashes of light, conceptualizing their entire design in his head and correcting their flaws without ever putting pen to paper. In an interview from 1919, he described this process, stating, "I do not rush into actual work. When I get an idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination. I change the construction, make improvements and operate the device in my mind. It is absolutely immaterial to me whether I run my turbine in thought or test it in my shop. Invariably, my device works as I conceived that it should, and the experiment comes out exactly as I planned it. In 20 years, there has not been a single exception." Tesla excelled in the education system, but ended up dropping out of university due to a gambling addiction and other personal issues.
And the only way we know about that is due to Tesla's autobiography, where he self-describes that he did in his youth become addicted to gambling and card games.
Inspired by electrical demonstrations by his physics professor, Tesla went and got a job with the Paris branch of the Continental Edison Company in 1882, installing indoor lighting around the city. Management soon realized that his talents were wasted on such a job, and tasked him with constructing and improving dynamos and motors. He was so insightful in his innovations that the company soon had him traveling around Europe, fixing problems at other Edison installations. In 1884, at the age of 28, Tesla's manager offered him a job at Edison Machine Works in New York City, an offer he accepted. He soon moved to America, where he would spend a majority of his life, becoming a naturalized citizen 7 years later in 1891. He soon came into contact with company owner Thomas Edison, and the two initially got on, with Tesla describing Edison as an inspirational figure, and Edison stating to Tesla, "I have had many hard-working assistants, but you take the cake." This mutual admiration would not last long, however, with a lifelong rivalry soon developing. The main source of animosity between the two resulted from a disagreement about the type of current each man preferred. Edison's company owned the patents for DC, or direct current, a system where electric charge only flows in one direction. Tesla, however, was an advocate for alternating current, or AC, a system where the electric charge changes direction periodically. These changes in direction allow AC current to maintain power over longer distances. It is also possible to use devices called transformers to change the magnitude of AC voltage, allowing a current to travel at a high voltage and then be reduced to a lower voltage for safe use in homes. Tesla tried explaining the benefits of alternating current to Edison, but Edison wouldn't listen, as it could ruin the sales for direct current, to which he owned all the patents. Edison then offered Tesla a large bonus of $50,000 if he redesigned 24 of his obsolete machines. Upon completion, Edison refused to pay, and revealed that the task had been a practical joke, saying, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Tesla resigned after 6 months at the company and set...
Imagine that. And so there's another story that the first time meeting Edison personally, now he had already been hired by Edison's company, that Tesla spent all night, there was power generators on these naval ships, and that he spent like 2 days without sleeping fixing all these ships. And when he was introduced to Edison, the gentleman said, "This is Nikola Tesla. He's, a new employee. He's the one that did all this work." And he said, "Wow, I've had multiple employees, but nobody's ever worked that hard." And then that's when he asked him to rebuild his obsolete machines. And then when Tesla, who he thought he was going to get $50,000, which is a significant amount of money back in the day, he tells him it was basically a practical joke. You don't understand American humor. And that pissed Tesla off so bad that he quits and he goes to dig holes. That's what he did until Westinghouse picked him up.
Set out on his own. He wanted to change the world, and he knew he could. He spent the next year setting up his own company, developing his ideas on alternating current. However, his investors showed little interest and decided to take the company, including all the patents he created. He was left digging ditches in the street to survive. Fortunes would soon change for Tesla, however, with his ideas on an alternating current motor catching the eye of a new investor, helping establish the Tesla Electric Company in 1887. He then designed a motor which was much cheaper and easier to maintain than the ones using a direct current. He revealed his motor at the American Institute of Electrical Engineers the following year, a display that caught the attention of a businessman named George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was a major player in the electric market and needed Tesla's motor to complete his alternating current system, a system that would compete against Thomas Edison. Westinghouse bought the motor and hired Tesla as a consultant for the equivalent of $55,000 a month, along with royalties for each horsepower produced by his motors.
Now think about that. Let's just look it up. What was $55,000 a month? Let's see, $55,000 in late 19th century America. So that'd be relative to what? Well, tell me how much it is. How much in modern money? So one, what? How is it? That doesn't make any sense at all. What is, okay. $1,365,000. $1.3 million a month. A month, guys. That's how much money he was making. And his agreement on $2.50 per horsepower, if that agreement was continued with Westinghouse, in just a few years, now the Westinghouse operation ends up, getting in financial trouble. They have to break this royalty deal with Tesla. But if it continued, he would have made more money and been wealthier than John D. Rockefeller. Think about that. Tesla almost became the wealthiest man in America. And it was claimed that if he was to keep that royalty, he would have been worth hundreds of billions of dollars throughout his life. Again, this man dies in poverty, but I just wanted to show you the scale of money that he was actually making. Over $1 million a month. A month.
Things for Tesla were looking good. And so began the War of the Currents. Edison started going to extreme lengths to discredit Tesla's AC system.
Oh, you think the narrator meant 55,000 in today? Potentially. Potentially. That may have been it.
He began paying school children 25 cents to bring him household pets, where he would set up a public stage and electrocute the animals in an attempt to show the public that Tesla's AC system was not safe. Over time, electrocutions increased in scale, with a horse eventually being executed in public. Edison continued executing animals many years after the War of the Currents had concluded, with the Edison Film Company producing a short film in 1903 titled Electrocuting an
No, I actually don't believe that was in Modern Money for JFB. I actually don't believe that to be the case because there's other documentaries talking about the millions of dollars that he stacked up. So he also had all these patents and all these licensing deals, but other sources that I was reading was talking about, again, $20-some thousand a month at the time for certain inventions he had.
elephant. The film showed the electrocution of Topsy, a former circus elephant who was killed when 6,600 volts were shot through her body. Despite the negative press generated by Edison, Tesla and Westinghouse continued to develop their alternating current system. The opportunity to show that alternating current was both safe and viable for large-scale use came at the World's Columbian Exposition, hosted in Chicago in 1893. Edison had put forward an offer to light the fair, but Westinghouse underbid him, winning the contract and with it the chance to outshine Edison. While it was a struggle to provide lighting at the low cost put forward, Westinghouse and Tesla succeeded, showing the world the strength of alternating current. Their success continued, with Westinghouse Electric being chosen over Edison's company, General Electric, to construct a hydroelectric plant at Niagara Falls. Tesla drew up designs for the plant, which was a massive success, eventually powering part of New York City. Alternating current continued to grow in popularity and became the system we all use to power our homes today, with direct current being phased out over the next decade. While Westinghouse won the War of the Currents, his company was left on the verge of bankruptcy, with $10 million of debt. He turned to Tesla for help, asking him to temporarily reduce his royalties to help him keep his company afloat. Compelled by compassion for his friend, instead of reducing his royalties, Tesla tore up his contract, eliminating them entirely. The money he gave up would be worth $300 million in today's money, but this was of little concern to Tesla, who was more interested in the pursuit of science over financial gain. This act saved Westinghouse, who would go on to buy Tesla's AC patent for $216,000 in 1897. This is equivalent to about $6 million today, money that Tesla used.
There you go. He's not talking about money in today's terms, okay? So just FYI, I was right.
To set up new laboratories in New York and fully dedicate himself to invention. Tesla had become an international figure, with his laboratories frequently visited by the rich and powerful, including his close friend and father of American literature, Mark Twain. Tesla's inventions were numerous, with him amassing almost 300 patents in his career. He created an early version of neon lighting, a highly efficient bladeless turbine for automobiles, and was the pioneer in X-ray technology, being one of the first to warn of its dangers to humans. One of his most famous inventions was his renowned Tesla coil, a device capable of producing large amounts of high-voltage electricity. A standout invention was a remote-controlled boat displayed at Madison Square Garden in 1898. This boat was such an amazing advance in wireless technology and so ahead of its time that the audience initially thought he was using magic or telepathy to make it move. There were even claims that there was a monkey hidden inside the boat, who was trained to operate it.
And there's another claim that I read regarding that incident where they said they thought that somebody was inside of the machine because one of the people during his demonstration yelled out to the boat, essentially, what is the square root of 64? And 4 lights flashed on the remote control boat, causing the audience to gasp because they thought it was basically like a sentient machine. Now, Tesla probably had a button or something to be able to make the lights do that. So it's believed that Tesla probably answered the question, but just for the significance of the narrative here, during this demonstration, somebody yells out, "What's the square root of 64?" And then the boat, while remote control going around this pool, flashes 4 times. People are like, "Oh my gosh."
While Tesla was an amazing inventor, he struggled to market his creations, always looking towards the next invention, rather than working out how to sell what he had already made. Many of his ideas went unwritten, and the ones that were noted down often went without a legal patent. This method of operating caused Tesla serious issues when he began working on radio at the end of the 19th century. He came up with the idea of radio in 1892, and was soon ready to transmit a signal to a location 50 miles away. But disaster struck, with his work being destroyed in a lab fire in 1895. Tesla had not submitted a patent application, and only did so after 2 years of rebuilding his research. At the same time,
So, just for more clarity here, Tesla believed that it was sabotage, that someone deliberately burnt down his laboratory. The fire apparently started in the basement of this big complex. Again, I don't know if it was an apartment complex or what, but Tesla owned the entire 4th floor, and that was his laboratory. And the story goes that he finds out it's on fire, rushes to it, sees the whole thing burned down. His entire lab crashes onto the 2nd floor. Almost everything is destroyed. And it took days. Tesla just went into his room and just laid in bed for days. I forget what the exact quote is when someone came to ask him, like, "Mr. Tesla, are you going to come back out?" Something to the effect like, "I've lost everything. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do now." And so he had to rebuild his patents and everything, of which Marconi here steals and utilizes.
An Italian inventor named Marconi had also been working on radio, establishing patent rights in England, but when he tried to acquire them in the United States, he was turned down as his ideas were deemed too similar to Tesla's. Unfortunately for Tesla, Marconi was able to make the world's first transatlantic radio message in 1901, using 17 of Tesla's patents. Thomas Edison then threw his financial weight behind Marconi, with the US Patent Office suddenly changing its mind on its previous rulings. Marconi now had rights in the United States, with Edison able to take a cut of the profits. Tesla initially let the issue slide, but the last straw came when Marconi won the Nobel Prize in 1911 for his development of radio, something which was only possible due to Tesla's uncredited work. Tesla tried to sue Marconi, but the cases dragged on for years, only being resolved in Tesla's favour 8 months after his death. Tesla's most radical idea came about at the turn of the 20th century. He aimed to create a world wireless system, which would be capable of dispersing energy to anywhere in the world. Tesla received funding for this project in 1901, and soon purchased land on Long Island, New York, where he would construct his device. Over the next year, a great wooden tower was constructed, standing 187 feet tall, with a metal dome 68 feet in diameter. He named the facility Wardenclyffe Tower, and believed it would radically advance wireless technology with what he called communication devices, the likes of which would not be seen for another century. A telephone subscriber here may call up and talk to any other subscriber on the globe. An inexpensive receiver, not bigger than a watch, will enable him to listen anywhere, on land or sea, to a speech delivered or music played in some other place, however distant. In the same manner, any picture, character, drawing or print can be transferred from one to another place. Millions of such instruments can be operated, from but one plant of this kind.
And so essentially he's talking about the world we live in now with our smartphones and sending photos and videos to each other. Think about that. Tesla's talking about that in the very early 1900s regarding his free energy technology. He was already seeing the future, that we would have these handheld devices that are wireless and would connect to a global electrical grid where we could share information. It's the world we live in now.
The tower also had other applications, including universal and accurate timekeeping, global music distribution, and a marine system which would allow ships to determine their exact location and steer perfectly without the need for a compass. Despite his amazing ideas, Tesla soon suffered many setbacks. Marconi's 1901 radio broadcast had drawn attention away from Wardenclyffe Tower, with the media beginning to think of the project as a hoax. The investors Tesla had been able to gather soon realized that there was no way to regulate and therefore profit from the energy produced by the tower. This led many investors to back out, leaving Tesla, who was now in his 50s, in financial ruin. Tesla struggled on for over a decade, trying to complete his plans in vain. He then had a nervous breakdown, and his debt reached so high he lost Wardenclyffe to foreclosure in 1915. The land soon passed to another owner, who destroyed the tower to make space for real estate. Tesla was now bankrupt, and his mental health started to significantly decline. He began living in a string of hotels, and started caring for pigeons, taking time every day to feed and care for them. In his late 70s, he ended up at the New Yorker Hotel, where he would stay for the rest of his life. This was largely thanks to the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company, who saw the dire conditions he was in and decided to pay his rent as a way to thank him for saving them all those years ago. Tesla went on to live until the age of 86, dying in his hotel room on the 7th of January 1943. Nikola Tesla was a man ahead of his time. His advancements in electricity were radical, helping to usher in the modern age, with his influence seen in anything from X-rays to remote control. His world wireless system had the potential to advance technology by nearly a century, while also providing free energy to the globe. Unlike so many of his era, Tesla did not work for financial gain, instead working to advance humanity. Perhaps it is not surprising that a man so far ahead of his time has only found his place in the 21st century, an age shaped by his technological brilliance.
So, again, it's kind of a sad story, but we're going to get into some of the Orthodox stuff now, but we're going to come back to this and I just want to share this link because I watched so many documentaries. This old PBS documentary, which I may post on the YouTube channel because it's no longer copyrighted. It's so old. This was back when they actually made good historical documentaries. Not, put in Nikola Tesla. There's going to be like 20 History Channel documentaries. Half of them are going to be ancient aliens and all these different, conspiracy stuff that's very unprovable. Or they're going to reintroduce his technology, stuff like that. But these old documentaries, this one has information because the entire documentary is based on his autobiography, and then they take all the historical sources. We're going to watch sections of this, but I just wanted to share that with you guys because if you're interested after the stream, that is the documentary you should watch. That was the best one I found. There's a bunch of AI sort of documentaries online. I wish it was in higher detail quality. It's only like 360p, but it is a very, very quality documentary. All right, let's get into his Orthodox stuff and a little bit on his life and an overview. So this is the study guide I put together. It will be available over at the Logos Academy. Do join if you're interested. We've already kind of got an overview of his life. This is the Church of the Holy Transfiguration of God, where that icon of him, again, not a halo, not a saint, but a reverent depiction of him as an Orthodox hero and son of the Orthodox Church. We already heard born 1856, July 10th, in Smiljan, then the Austrian Empire, Austrian-Hungarian Empire, modern-day Croatia. Just the context in which he was born in, realize this is right before what we call the Second Industrial Revolution, the electrification, mass media, global communication. Europe is industrializing rapidly during this period, most of which is driven by coal and oil. The Balkans remain deeply religious and politically unstable, and Tesla is born into a Serbian Orthodox priest family. As I said, his father, his uncle, his grandfather, and all three brothers-in-law are Orthodox priests. Early on, his family saw he had an extraordinary memory, which obviously was aided by his mother practicing mnemonic techniques with him, intense imagination, obsessive tendencies, what again we may consider it OCD or autism, something of that nature, ability to mentally visualize machines. He could take machines and just see all the different intricate pieces and parts and put them back together in his mind. We heard about his brother Dane. When he died in front of him, he was deeply affected psychologically. This is him on his deathbed in 1873 from cholera, of which this is when his father, coming to his bedside in tears, says if he survives, he may pursue engineering instead of the priesthood. And Tesla, in his autobiography, talked about how this was a monumental moment in his life because now his father actually supported his dream. So then once he recovers in 1875, he goes to Graz Polytechnic Institute. He studies engineering. He excels at mathematics, physics, electrical engineering. This is also during the time in which he develops a bit of a gambling addiction. He loses the money he has. He ends up not going to class, not finishing his schoolwork, and even though he was number one in his class. So he gives up the gambling addiction due to, again, his family comes to help him, tells him, look, Tesla, you got to get your shit together, basically. And he does. He goes back to school, excels, and ends up going to Hungary and Budapest, where he conceives of the rotating magnetic field while walking in the park. This insight leads to his AC induction motor. That is the thing that he creates in tandem with Westinghouse to compete against Edison's direct current. It's a polyphase power system. And then 1884, he finally arrives in America. Now, since he was a child, when he first saw Niagara Falls, he knew he wanted to go to America, and he believed that he was destined to go. That's what I mean. His life is kind of mythological, and that he then gets a job for Thomas Edison, who he viewed as this great American inventor. Again, he invented the incandescent light bulb. And so Tesla arrives with 46 cents in his pocket. That's what I found from one source. And has a letter to Edison, which is a letter of recommendation from his associate in Europe. And America is becoming the center of industrial capitalism. It's a technological expansion and corporate modernization. Tesla enters the heart of modern technological civilization in New York City. And then 1884 to 1888, the War of Currents, which I'm going to show you a video of. That's one of the things we're going to get into from the documentary. And you already know AC allows for longer distance for power transmission, efficient electrical infrastructure, industrial scalability. It can actually power entire cities, which he does with the hydroelectric engines at Niagara. 1888, partnership with George Westinghouse. I would say one of the only investors that truly believed in Tesla. And it isn't until George Westinghouse dies that he loses his prominent backer. But Westinghouse, the children, the people that inherit the company end up, as I said, fitting the bill for his room and board the rest of his life, for like the last 10 years of his life. And Tesla's inventions begin to transform the modern world through electrical distribution, industrial electrification, and modern infrastructure. Then the Chicago World's Fair. One of the things I'm going to show you is that the president, I don't remember who the president was. Was it Cleveland? Who's the president in 1893? I think it was U.S. president. Who knows their presidents in 1893? Yeah, Grover Cleveland. I was right. Okay. I just need to trust myself sometimes. Grover Cleveland was the president, and they go to the Chicago Fair, and for the first time, everybody's there, everything is dark. And for the first time, they light an entire city with AC electric current. And everybody's just astonished. All the buildings have light, the street lamps work, and they even had multicolored spotlights, which nobody had seen before. So that all happens at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893 and demonstrates wireless lighting, high voltage electricity, electrical spectacle, and it becomes associated with progress, modernity, the future. 1895 through 1896, the Niagara Falls Power Project. I'm going to show you all about that. And this proves electricity can be transmitted over vast distances. Colorado Springs experiments, 1899, as we saw, his lab burns down, and in turn, he then relocates to Colorado. He wanted to get away from people. He felt people were trying to sabotage him. He becomes incredibly secretive about his work during this period because, as I said, Marconi already stole his patents. He believed that the U.S. government was even trying to steal aspects of his stuff. So when they went to build, he would hire people to help build stuff for him. They had to be incredibly secretive. He didn't let anybody know what he was working on. And he researches wireless transmission, resonance, giant electrical discharges, all that stuff. You guys get it. Then you get to the Wardenclyffe Tower. This is when he gets in association with J.P. Morgan. So J.P. Morgan wants him to be the first one to transmit a signal across the Atlantic. Unfortunately, Marconi does that. So Tesla's vision is for a worldwide communication, wireless energy transmission, and global information system. When J.P. Morgan then asked him, hey, how's the radio signals going? Marconi just did this. I'm investing in you. How come you're not the first? Tesla then lays out the case for free energy, of which J.P. Morgan had he was basically a monopolistic owner of energy companies at the time. He was not interested in free energy. That means he wasn't going to make money. Pulls the money from Tesla, the entire project falls apart. So that's why from 1906 to 1907, this is decline and isolation. Fails financially, large corporations increasingly dominate technological development. J.P. Morgan convinces all the other investors, do not support Tesla, do not invest in any of his work. He could not get anyone to back him. 1917, the Wardenclyffe Tower is totally demolished. Collapse of Tesla's utopian technological vision and triumph of corporate industrial pragmatism. 1920s through 30s, Tesla as aging technological prophet. Tesla makes increasingly dramatic claims, wireless weapons. Again, he called it teleforce. The public called it death rays, directed energy systems, futuristic technologies. Tesla's public image shifts toward eccentric genius to misunderstood prophet and mysterious visionary. Soon, he's going to be considered an old quack. That was kind of the reputation. Now, Edison dies in like 1935. And right before the death of Edison, the Nobel Prize was offered to Tesla and Edison together for their inventions. The story goes that Tesla rejected the Nobel Prize, even though he was desperate for money. He needed the prize because it would have absolutely helped him financially. He rejected it because he refused to accept an award with Thomas Edison. And it was, again, just a few years later, Edison ends up dying. 1943, Tesla dies. During World War II, he dies alone in the New Yorker, New York City. World War II is underway. Governments feared advanced weapons technology. And then we get John G. Trump reviews Tesla papers. We're going to go into a little bit more detail on this later. But essentially, Trump, the uncle of Donald Trump, argues that it's all speculative, theoretical, and not containing any deployable super weapons. Again, despite 20 of the trunks of notes somehow missing. They've never been accounted for. And so post 1943, 5 months after his death, he ends up winning his lawsuit. The U.S. Supreme Court rules in his favor that Marconi essentially stole his patents. But at that time, Marconi already received a Nobel Prize. He was wealthy, he was famous, and so it didn't really affect Marconi that much. But for Tesla, that's the one things he wanted towards the end of his life, but he didn't have money to fight the case legally. So again, 5 months after his death, he ends up actually winning the case by the U.S. Supreme Court. Tesla's life mirrors the transformation of the world from Orthodox frontier civilization to industrial modernity, technological utopianism, to 20th century anxiety about science and power, right at the height of World War II. I want to scroll down here. We're going to hear about his Tesla coils and stuff like that. But I want to get into his orthodoxy and how his worldview, Tesla in Eastern Orthodox theology, I think, now I've never seen this argued. I did not find this anywhere online. This was me just taking what I discovered or what I took from Tesla's worldview and applying it to Orthodox theology of finding some type of resonance, which Tesla was obsessed with the idea of frequency resonance. There's famous stories about how he would be in a building and he would find the resonance where the whole building would start to shake. And he believed that as long as you could find the right frequency, you could essentially destroy anything. So Tesla's worldview, his relationship to Orthodox theology, energy and the Orthodox essence energy distinction. Tesla's view often described reality through energy, vibration, frequency, and invisible forces. He viewed the universe as dynamic and interconnected. This is very different from the reductionist materialistic view that the other inventors he's competing with understood the world as. Obviously, Eastern Orthodoxy teaches that God reveals himself through his divine energies. Reality is not viewed as dead matter. He did not view it as dead matter, but as a creation participating in deeper spiritual realities. Obviously, there's a key difference between his scientific electrical energy and divine energies, but there's an interesting correlation there. I think that his Orthodox formation growing up influenced how he viewed the world and why he was bringing new ideas to a world that was essentially stagnant. That's what the second industrial revolution was, is that the first industrial revolution became stagnant. There's very few inventions for about 50 years until the height of the second industrial revolution that he was a part of. Light and illumination. Tesla's fascination with light. As I said, remember, he was born during a lightning storm. Very mythic. He became associated with electricity, lightning, illumination, and radiance. He imagined bringing light to humanity through technology. Orthodox resonance, divine light, the transfiguration, the Taboric light, uncreated light, the spiritual illumination. Key difference, obviously, is spiritual illumination comes from God, not through Tesla's technological progress and inventions. Cosmic harmony and logos. This is a big one. You've heard about him talking about the numbers 3, 6, and 9, talking about deeper metaphysical structures in nature itself that he felt he was uncovering. He believed that if you sat and reflected and directed your mind towards these deeper realities, that essentially you would resonate with them and you would receive these ideas. And so he believed the universe possessed hidden order, a logos, mathematical harmony, intelligible structure. It wasn't, again, a reductionist materialistic worldview. Orthodoxy teaches creation is ordered through the logos. Now, obviously, key differences, cosmic order itself as ultimate, while Orthodoxy teaches creation points towards the personal God of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But as I said, he's anti-material. He believed in invisible realities. Tesla rejected purely mechanistic materialism and believed unseen forces governed our reality, including spiritual entities. Orthodoxy also rejects reductionist materialism, and reality includes spiritual realities, divine presence, and metaphysical participation. Asceticism and discipline. Now, this was kind of a stretch on my end, but I thought there's something there. Tesla lived celibately with intense self-discipline and obsessive concentration. He was obsessed with how he looked. He was obsessed with how he ate. I was reading one description of when he would go to dinner, and he went to some of the most expensive restaurants in New York City at the time, that he demanded that the tablecloth be brand new. He never wore gloves more than 3 or 4 days. He would always get on like new white gloves. He needed a stack of brand new napkins every time he ate dinner. If there was a fly or anything, any bug or insect that he saw around his food, he would have to start over this whole ritual process that he did every time he ate. So again, OCD had a bit of the tism, but Orthodoxy values the asceticism, the fasting, the self-control, and inward discipline. Tesla's discipline aimed at intellectual and technological achievement. As I said, the reason he didn't have sex is he believed it would diminish his mental capability. Orthodox asceticism aims at repentance, holiness, and union with God. A little bit different, but an interesting correlation there. And then technology and salvation. Tesla's vision, he increasingly believed that science and technology could transform humanity, which it has. His inventions have done that. But Orthodoxy warns against treating technology as salvific, replacing spiritual transformation with progress, and confusing power with wisdom. Technology can improve civilization, but it cannot conquer sin, heal the soul, or bring theosis. So that was a little bit about Tesla's relationship to Orthodox theology, if you will, regarding his ideas. Now, we're going to get back to some other videos, and I want to play a little bit of our documentary here where Tesla, again, this is the PBS documentary that I highly recommend if you are interested in this type of stuff. This is where we're at right now, is right at the height of the current wars between him and Edison. And it's going to be hitting on the fact where he's building this hydroelectric power from the Falls of Niagara, which he envisioned himself doing as a small child. So he's literally living out a childhood dream. We're going to play a little bit of this. This is the best documentary, as I said. And then I want to get into some of the relationships with the Orthodox saint, with the Serbian Orthodox Church, and then we're going to get into all the conspiracies with John G. Trump and what happened to Tesla's stuff afterwards.
The Columbian Exposition in Chicago was to be the first World's Fair lighted by electricity.
The Edison Company, the Thomson-Houston Company, they all got together and formed General Electric Company, 1892. And one of the first things they did, of course, was put in a bid for the job at the fair. Their bid was roughly $1 million. The Westinghouse bid was about $500,000, and naturally, Westinghouse got the job.
In retaliation, GE refused to sell Westinghouse any of their Edison light bulbs.
And they got some judge to say that Westinghouse couldn't use any one-piece lamps of any description at the fair.
Westinghouse frantically devised a two-piece stopper lamp by fair time and saved the day. Now Tesla had a chance to make history in Chicago. His large AC generators would supply all of the fair's electricity and prove that his system would work on a large scale. On May 1st, 1893, 100,000 eager spectators filed into the fairgrounds, awed by the gleaming neoclassical architecture. Night fell. President Grover Cleveland pressed a button, and the fairgrounds exploded with brilliant tube lighting and multicolored searchlights. The most incredible display of lighting the world had ever seen. In the great hall of electricity, the public could see that the Tesla Westinghouse system made it all possible. To overcome the impression that AC was dangerous, Tesla put on remarkable demonstrations. He created a device called the Egg of Columbus to show the rotating magnetic field created by his AC motor.
In his room, he had cork-soled shoes on and a tuxedo and white tie and a top hat. And he would put his hand on a terminal, which would flash electricity through his body, creating a great shower as his whole body was encompassed in flame. And people were quite impressed by this, to say the least.
The Chicago Exposition left an indelible impression on the American imagination. This was the gleaming new city of the future. and it was powered by the inventions of Nikola Tesla. Since childhood, Tesla had dreamed of harnessing the power of the great natural wonder called Niagara Falls. The famous British physicist Lord Kelvin was now head of an international commission to find a way to use the fall's power.
He had sent a cable to all the other members of his commission, and it said, "Trust you avoid the gigantic mistake of alternating current."
But all this dramatically changed when Lord Kelvin attended the Chicago Exposition and saw the AC system in operation. A contract was immediately awarded to Westinghouse Electric to power the mighty cataract with AC. The technical challenge was daunting. The Niagara plan called for 3 5,000 horsepower alternators, the largest generators ever made. Tesla and Westinghouse engineers had heated disagreements about the operating frequency. Even when the system was finally installed, Tesla was the only person who was certain it would operate.
The technical details have been completely worked out. All that now remains is for the switch to be thrown.
In 1896, the system went online and the electrical age began. The waters of the upper Niagara turned enormous water turbines connected by shafts to the massive 5,000 horsepower generators. The current from the generators was stepped up with transformers to 22,000 volts and sent out over long-distance lines, then stepped back down to light municipalities and power motors of Tesla's design. The Niagara Falls Gazette proclaimed,
"This morning, the streetcars of this city are moving by falls power. Hereafter, the falls must work to earn their living."
Imagine my surprise when 30 years later I saw my boyhood plan carried out at Niagara and wondered at the unfathomable mystery of the mind.
Within a few years, the number of generators at Niagara was increased to 10. By the turn of the century, the power lines stretched 360 miles to New York City. The War of the Currents was over, and Tesla was the winner.
By the time Tesla effectively arrives on the scene with his motor, Edison is out of the business. He's basically written out of his own company.
This was something Edison would not soon forget. In spite of the success of AC, Westinghouse had overextended his company's resources, leading to severe financial difficulties. In order to save the company, Tesla said that he tore up his royalty contract for $2.50 per horsepower generated. Today, this agreement would be worth trillions. Had the inventor been tricked again?
This is something that we've never found any record of in the Westinghouse annals. We do have something which is a memorandum of agreement about that, but it was never signed.
But Tesla was ready to move on.
I had already perceived enough to get the idea that energy could be transmitted and received without connecting wires in between.
He was convinced his next invention would make him a millionaire once more.
My services with Westinghouse being no longer essential, I resumed experimental work in a laboratory on Grand Street, where I began immediately the design of high-frequency machines.
Following the success of Niagara, Tesla was at the height of social acclaim. Everyone wanted to know more of this mysterious foreigner who was transforming the world with his electrical inventions.
So far as personal appearance goes, no one can look upon him without feeling his force. His cheekbones are high and prominent, the mark of the Slav. His eyes are blue, deeply set, and they burn like balls of fire. Franklin Chester, the citizen.
Why was he so well known and so popular? It's because the technological advances that he made were so directly related to the relief of the drudgery that people had to endure in their work lives. They could see what he did helped them personally.
Every evening, Tesla showed up at Delmonico's, the most expensive restaurant in town, to be shown to his special table.
He is fanatical about his dress, usually sporting a fine waistcoat, white leather gloves, and a derby hat on his head. He is meticulous about his health and drinks a glass of whiskey a day, saying it will increase his life expectancy to 150 years of age.
Tesla hobnobbed with the leading politicians, millionaires, and celebrities of the era. This was the best way for independent inventors to find support for their projects. His friends were the New York elite: John Jacob Astor, William K. Vanderbilt, and the writer Mark Twain.
I have just seen the drawings and description of an electrical machine lately patented by Mr. Tesla, which will revolutionize the whole electric business of the world.
One of Tesla's closest friends was Robert Underwood Johnson, editor of the prestigious Century magazine. Johnson's wife was deeply in love with Tesla.
I love this part. So it's going to get in. We just heard about how immaculate he presents himself, how handsome he was, and how people perceived him. Now it's going to get into all the ladies throwing themselves at him, including the wife of an associate.
My dear Nicky, do leave aside the millionaires in Fifth Avenue for some simple pleasures. From one distinguished only by a great weakness, Katherine Johnson.
In fact, the world-famous inventor was also New York's most intriguing bachelor.
The fact that he never married, I think, had almost nothing to do with his interest in women. It appeared that he was always very interested and was attractive to women.
Many women sought his attention. The beautiful and wealthy socialite Flora Dodge, and even the famous French actress Sarah Bernhardt. But in spite of his charisma, Tesla was only interested in his inventions.
He had so many phobias that he couldn't have had close relationships with women. He didn't like most of the jewelry that they wore or the perfume, and he couldn't bear to touch hair. And and in fact, he didn't like to shake hands. And so these are all things that do tend to discourage intimate relationships.
The inventor even claimed that he destroyed his sexuality at the age of 40.
A certain French actress kept coming to me and made it impossible for me to concentrate. It's a pity, too, for sometimes I feel so lonely.
Throughout the
So that was, again, a little bit of this personal life that I thought was interesting, wanted to share with you guys. So next thing I want to get into, and let me catch up with the chat real quick. Where are we at on Super Chats? Cody Mills, shout out. Logos Academy member, shout out to Cody Mills. Throws in 5, says baptism fee. Thank you very much, brother. Really appreciate the support. Texas Nevsky became a Codal Crew member. Shout out to you, Texas Nevsky. And throws in $5. Thank you very much, brother. Blue Skittle throws in his pay piggy, $5. Thank you very much, Blue Skittle. Appreciate you, brother. And Darth Grumpy Dad throws in 5. Says, now you need a dapper Tesla emote. Yep. You mean like an emoji for the members? Yeah, I do. Guys, if you appreciate this content and the time I spent trying to dive into everything, please support my work with a super chat here on YouTube. We're trying to raise funds for another community-sponsored stream. If we reach the 50 super chat mark, you guys can choose what the next stream is, of which you guys picked this stream, and the last one was Vlad the Impaler. The one before that was an Orthodox perspective on the Crusades. Some great topics. So that is the goal for today, if we can raise enough money. Do support my work. I'd greatly appreciate it. Let me check the dono chat real quick, see if anybody supported over there. All right. So, okay, doesn't look like it. Now, don't make me hold the stream hostage, guys. Don't make me hold this stream hostage. The next thing I really want to get into is his relationship to the Orthodox Church. And this is a lecture that was presented by Bogdan Lubartovich, to a faculty of Orthodox theology in Serbia. And he goes in to talk about how the life of Tesla and what he did for mankind is emblematic of his Orthodox Christian ethos and how he cared for people. On both levels, he has done inestimable good. To give light to others is good. To be good is enlightening to others. Tesla was both. Therefore, the Serbian Orthodox Church has never hesitated to recognize Tesla as one of their own. I shall go further to say that there is a bond, a special one, yet to be explored apophatically between the person of Nikola Tesla and what I perceive as the light gifting energies of the Holy Spirit. These are given to all creatures by our Lord Jesus Christ, the Logos through whom all things are made. As he himself says, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. In reference to that, the iconic image of Tesla sitting amongst lightning released by his magnifying transmitter in Colorado Springs laboratory with a book open in front of him seems to be a prophetic spiritual event also. Not only an amazing display of scientific super genius at work, for it is an image of communion with the physical and metaphysical sides of the mystery of light. And then he goes on to talk about how some quotes from Tesla. There's more, namely, one cannot forget Tesla's own words on the matter of faith, God, and religion. This is what Tesla had to say. I see a friend hurt, it hurts me too. My friend and I are one. And now I see stricken down an enemy, a lump of matter, which all of the lumps of matter in the universe I care least for. And it grieves me. Does this not prove that each of us is only part of a whole? The following meditations of this outstanding man are illustrative too. Quote, many a year I have thought and pondered, lost myself in speculation and theories, considering man as a mass moved by a force, viewing his inexplicable movement in the light of a mechanical one, and applying the simple principles of mechanics to the analysis of the same until I've arrived at these solutions, only to realize that they were taught to me in my early childhood. These three words, food, peace, work, sound the key notes of the Christian religion. Their scientific meaning and purpose now clear to me, to increase human energy. We now recognize this. We cannot help wondering how profoundly wise and scientific and how immensely practical the Christian religion is, and in what a marked contrast it stands in respect to other religions. That's a quote from Tesla. And then it talks a little bit about how he did view positively Buddhism. He did. Again, it says, it is certainly true at other times he expounded views which are not entirely in tune with what we deem as sound, say in a fully orthodox sense. For example, his equaling of the Buddhist doctrine on equality of human beings with the Christian one, or his negation of religion as religion, or his musings of the transcendence of personhood of any given individual. Still, these views are explainable as his relentless commitment to service for all mankind by his liberal comprehensiveness and by the fact he understood very well that God and religion are not equal or mutually irreducible or reducible. Then here is some another quote. This is him talking about Buddhism. We're going to skip that one. And then his ecclesial inheritance, talk about his father, his grandfather, his uncle. Milutin Tesla was his father. And then down here, there's an interesting section that talks about Metropolitan of Sarajevo, Nikolai Mandic. He regarded his personal copy of the Book of Holy Services as the most valuable one in his library. He was the president of the Serbian Ecclesial Education Commune in New York. He was the godfather of the Church of St. Sava in Gary, Indiana. I was not aware of that. He was awarded the St. Sava Medal of the first class. Yet, he always spoke in non-chauvinistic and non-confessional terms of God and Christianity, of the fundamental unity and oneness of mankind created according to the image of a higher reality, that is, according to light, beauty, and charity. He was a Serb, yet he was an American. He was ours, and he belongs to everyone. But so it is with Christ as well. He belongs to you and me in particular, and to everyone in general, across boundaries of space and time, social and economic rank, or those of race and gender. Hence, it is no surprise that both Mihailo Pupin and Nikola Tesla's busts dedicated and stand together next to St. Nikolai Velimirovich, who we're going to get into, in the forecourt of Lower Manhattan Serbian Orthodox Cathedral, note of St. Sava. It's safe to say that St. Sava gave the light of Orthodox faith to the Serbian nation, being himself the light of Christ by the Spirit. And then there's an interesting quote down here of Tesla, and it says, still, the mentioned sentence is the same concordance with Anagla's thought Tesla expressed elsewhere with the circumstances of life or attitudes of his mind and heart, which may be reconstructed in favor of the above stated, and vice versa. In the mentioned edition of Tesla's autobiography, and some others too, these words appear as well. Quote, peace can only come as a natural consequence of universal enlightenment and merging of races. Where did I go? I just lost my... merging of races. And we still far from this blissful realization, because few indeed will admit the reality that God made man in his image, in which case all earth men are alike. There is in fact but one race of many colors. Christ is but one person, yet he is all of people. So why do some people think themselves better than other people? And that's a quote from Nikola Tesla. So interesting in his relationship. Again, this is the icon of him in Bosnia. And then Saint Nikolai Velimirovich, this is a little discussion between the two. So they used to call each other, anybody who speaks Serbian would know, it's like Tekio. It means someone with the same name, or they referred to each other that way. You'll see it in just a second. So Nikolai Velimirovich comes to the U.S. to get the three most prominent Serbian Americans together to give voice to the Serbian nation during the early 20th century. And he meets with Mihailo Pupin, a scientist, Nikola Tesla, and Paha Radoslavovich, a psychologist. And the whole goal was to bring these American Serbs together to give support for Serbia. And eventually he hears from Tesla, who says that he doesn't want to be involved in politics and things like that because he's so focused on his research. He says, on repeated requests by Dr. Nikola Tesla, answered like this: I know our Serbian people. They have their own views about everything. Such an appeal would not be well received, and some of our journalists would stab the signatories with the sharpness of their pen. But now you have come from the homeland. Why did you not bring such an appeal to American Serbs from our two Serbian rulers, King Petar and King Nikola? Tesla stuck to his decision, but due to respect toward, again, to be Saint Nikolai, he took a copy of that appeal to read it, the appeal for the Serbian Americans. The next day, after the meeting with Tesla, Father Nikolai Velimirovich informed Radoslavovich, I was with Mr. Tesla. I am satisfied that I got to know such a great man. But on the other hand, I'm sorry that I even tried to involve him in the things of our nation. It is a sin to dissuade him from doing his job, that I dragged him out of his peace of mind. I have completely accepted his reasons. Radoslavovich and Pupin signed the appeal without visible result, and Radoslavovich suffered criticism from Serbs who considered his appeal as treason. This doesn't seem to have been the only meeting between the saint and scientist. An anecdote of one of the meetings between Velimirovich, now a bishop, and Tesla has arisen from 1927, which is described as follows. The holy bishop Nikolai Velimirovich was a close friend of Nikola Tesla, who himself was the son of a priest. The two of them often called each other Takayo, a person with the same name. When the bishop was in America in 1927, he visited the famous scientist and Tesla, invited him to his laboratory. As soon as the bishop opened the door to the Tesla laboratory, Tesla put in motion 1,000 wheels and gears. Quote, "My friend, what did you just do? What kind of force is it that drives so many wheels?" asked Bishop Nikolai. "You're an educated man. You should know what it is," Tesla answered. "What is it?" "Electricity, Takayo. Since you are such a great expert in electricity, tell me whether your science will reveal the way to see this current of power with the naked eye." "Never," said Tesla, "as long as the world exists." "Then why are people asking to see God? For power exists when you cannot see it with the naked eye," concluded Bishop Nikolai. It should also be noted that busts of these two men are located outside the Cathedral of St. Sava in New York City. So, a little bit on Tesla's relationship to Bishop Nikolai Velimirovich. Interesting little connection that I found online, rummaging the internet. Okay, now I want to get into what happens to Tesla's papers after his death. That is one of the more interesting questions. We'll begin with the conspiracy theories. Well, actually, we'll just begin with this and get into the video, and then we'll get into the conspiracy theories. So let me catch up with the chat real quick. Snagglebeast throws in $2. Thank you very much. He says, "Great Northern War, folks. Listen to some Sabaton." Looks like he's already voiced his support for the next topic. John Anon throws in 5, says, "Keep up the good work, DPH. St. Seraphim Rose, pray for us. Christ is ascended." Indeed he has. Misplaced Burrito throws in 10. Thank you very much. No comment. And Nathaniel throws in 10, says, "Tesla really seems like the last gentleman scientist, the kind of person who pursued the sciences out of genuine curiosity and altruism, and not just for money and political gain." Yeah, absolutely. No, he was a very principled man. That's for sure. And he absolutely believed in his work and what it could accomplish. So, all right, let's get into John G. Trump and what happened to the missing papers of Nikola Tesla. As I said, according to Tesla, before he died, he had 80 trunks of notes and research materials at the New Yorker where he lived the last decade of his life. But according to the FBI, they recovered 30. According to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade, they received 60 trunks. So that would mean the government potentially lied about 50. And then we know that 20 trunks, if we take Tesla at his word, have gone missing. So what happened to them? One of the more controversial topics involving Nikola Tesla is what became of many of his technical and scientific papers after he died in 1943. Just before his death, at the height of World War II, he claimed that he had perfected his so-called, well, he called it teleforce, they called it death beam. So it was natural that the FBI and other U.S. government agencies would be interested in any scientific ideas involving weaponry. Some were concerned that Tesla's papers might fall into the hands of Axis powers or the Soviets. The morning after the inventor's death, his nephew, Sava Kosanovich, hurried to his uncle's room at the Hotel New Yorker. He was an up-and-coming Yugoslav official with suspected connections to the Communist Party in his country. By the time he arrived, Tesla's body had already been removed, and Kosanovich suspected that someone had already gone through his uncle's effects. Technical papers were missing, as well as some black notebook he knew Tesla kept, a notebook with several hundred pages, some of which were marked government. P.E. Foxworth, assistant director of the New York FBI office, was called in to investigate. According to Foxworth, the government was, quote, vitally interested in preserving Tesla's papers 2 days after Tesla's death. Representatives of the Office of Alien Property went to his room at the New Yorker Hotel and seized all his possessions. Dr. John G. Trump, uncle of President Donald Trump, an electrical engineer with the National Defense Research Committee of the Office of Scientific Research and Development, was called in to analyze the Tesla papers in OAP custody. Following a 3-day investigation, Dr. Trump concluded, quote, Tesla's thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, often concerned with the production and wireless transmission of power, but did not include new sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. Now, remember, during that time, before his death, Tesla offered for $30 million his Teleforce to the British government, to the British royal family. We have a paper we allegedly is believed to have been done by Tesla to the Soviet Union, offering the same technology to them. So there's a weird inconsistency here with John G. Trump, because we know for a fact that Tesla, for the last 15 years of his life, had this Teleforce weapon that he was trying to sell. We know that for a fact. And those papers are supposedly even at the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. So this quote is very, very interesting, because it seems to obfuscate the fact that he did have working plans that he was trying to sell. Just after World War II, there was a renewed interest in beam weapons. Copies of Tesla's papers on particle beam weaponry were sent to Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. An operation codenamed Project Nick was heavily funded and placed under the command of Brigadier General L.C. Craigie to test the feasibility of Tesla's concept. Details of the experiments were never published, and the project was apparently discontinued. But something peculiar happened. The copies of Tesla's papers disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to them. In 1952, Tesla's remaining papers and possessions were released to Sava Kasanovic and returned to Belgrade, Yugoslavia, where a museum was created in the inventor's honor. For many years under Tito's communist regime, it was extremely difficult for Western journalists or scholars to gain access to the Tesla archive in Yugoslavia. Even then, they were allowed to see only selected papers. This was not the case for Soviet scientists who came in delegations during the 1950s. Concerns increased in 1960 when Soviet Premier Khrushchev announced to the Supreme Soviet that, quote, a new and fantastic weapon was in the hatching stage. Work on beam weapons also continued in the United States. In 1958, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, initiated a top-secret project codenamed Seesaw at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory to develop a charged particle beam weapon. More than 10 years and $27 million later, the project was abandoned, quote, because of the projected high costs associated with implementation, as well as the formidable technical problems associated with propagating a beam through the very long ranges in the atmosphere. Scientists associated with the project had no knowledge of Tesla's papers. In the late 1970s, there was a fear that the Soviets may have achieved a technological breakthrough. Some U.S. defense analysts concluded that a large beam weapon facility was under construction near the Sino-Soviet border in southern Russia. The American response to this technological surprise was the Strategic Defense Initiative announced by President Ronald Reagan in 1983. Teams of government scientists were urged to, quote, turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. Today, after a half-century of research and billions of dollars of investment, the SDI program is generally considered a failure, and there is still no realistic means of defense against a nuclear missile attack. For many years, scientists and researchers have sought for Tesla's missing papers with no apparent success. It is conceivable that if Tesla knew a means for accurately projecting lethal beams of energy through the atmosphere, he may have taken it to the grave with him. Now, as I said, those are kind of the two competing theories, that one, it wasn't there, or two, Tesla kept in the notes aspects of his technology out so that he would have to be present for it to be operable. Now, here are some of the more conspiracy-oriented theories about what happened to Tesla's stuff after his death. So, what happened to Tesla's papers and technology? As we said, he dies January 7th, 1943. As we'll see, we'll watch the end of that documentary, right before he's supposed to have a meeting with Franklin Roosevelt, President Franklin Roosevelt, regarding selling this technology to the United States, which again brings more questions regarding John G. Trump's statements, because he had a meeting set with the U.S. president. Then Tesla dies alone in the New Yorker hotel. Immediately, U.S. authorities quickly seize Tesla's papers and belongings. The FBI and Office of Alien Property becomes involved. Officials fear Tesla's work may contain advanced weapons. Who is John G. Trump? MIT professor, PhD in electrical engineering, high voltage physicist, and wartime scientific expert working for the U.S. government. Obviously, uncle of Donald Trump. Why was he chosen? The U.S. government selected Trump to review Tesla's papers because of his expertise in electrical systems, high voltage technology, and wartime scientific research. The official narrative, the official conclusion, is that Trump concluded Tesla's later work was largely speculative, theoretical, had nothing to do with a superweapon, and this conclusion remains highly controversial among Tesla researchers and conspiracy theorists. The missing papers theory, core claim. Not all Tesla documents were returned to his nephew. Inventories changed over time. As I said, he had 80 trunks. That says trucks. I didn't spell that right. Trunks. FBI claimed there was 30. Serbian Museum to this day has 60. So there's 20 trunks of notes missing. Argument: if Tesla's later work is truly worthless, why were the papers immediately seized? Why involve wartime intelligence? Why classify all the materials related to Tesla's research? Obviously, supporters argue sensitive technologies may have been quietly retained by the government. Energy-directed weapons theory. Tesla's Teleforce or death ray research involved particle beam weapons, directed energy systems, and advanced electromagnetic technologies. The argument is that later military technologies resemble concepts Tesla discussed: missile defense system, particle beams, electromagnetic weapons, high-energy directed systems. Supporters argue that Tesla may have possessed early theoretical concepts later explored secretly during the Cold War. The free energy suppression theory. Tesla allegedly discovered methods for wireless global power transmission, or highly efficient energy systems that threatened industrial monopolies. The Wardenclyffe Tower, which we discussed. Tesla attempted to build a global wireless communication and energy network. Supporters argue that financiers such as J.P. Morgan withdrew support because Tesla's ideas threatened his centralized energy profits. Morgan famously asked Tesla, "Where do we put the meter?" The theory claims decentralized energy systems would have disrupted corporate control. Defunding Tesla was a way to prevent loss of monopolistic control. Another theory is the military absorption. Tesla's later research was not publicly released because governments absorbed parts of it into classified military programs. During World War II and the Cold War, governments heavily classified advanced technologies, especially involving radar, which he was one of the first to put forth, energy systems, electromagnetics, and weapons research. Tesla's ideas may have quietly influenced black budget defense programs, directed energy research, and electromagnetic weapon system. Now, we know that Trump, I'm talking about President Trump here, they used energy-directed weapons when they got Maduro. That's what, according to the Colombians that were on the ground, they said the U.S. used some type of energy-directed weapon that caused people to start bleeding from their nose and their ears. They couldn't get up off the ground. Potentially, this is connected with Tesla's research. And then the John G. Trump suspicion. Why some distrust the official review. Conspiracy theorists argue that John G. Trump was highly qualified, deeply connected to wartime science, and capable of recognizing advanced technologies when he saw it. Because of this, many believe that he minimized Tesla's true discoveries, concealed the sensitive information that the government was looking for, and used it as a way to discredit the legitimacy of Tesla's inventions. And this is why generally the suppressed genius narrative is that Tesla fits the archetype of an isolated genius, misunderstood inventor, prophet ahead of his time. And factors fueling the suspicion is all the unfinished projects, the missing documents, the government secrecy, advanced predictions, wartime classification, and later technological parallels. So with all that being said, now let's listen to John G. Trump talk about what he saw when he went to go view these items.
The plane to Boston to find Dr. John Trump of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Dr. Trump was now retired from the company he founded, High Voltage Engineering, but he agreed to meet me at the company office the next morning.
In the spring of 1943, Dr. Carl T. Compton, who was then president of MIT, asked me to go to New York and examine the effects of Nikola Tesla. These were contained in an upper floor of a warehouse somewhere in New York City. And I spent a good deal of time examining one by one the papers, the books, and various other memorials that he had accumulated. But I was particularly looking for something which would be evidence of a secret weapon, which I was reminded by the agents, the two agents who were present during the entire time, was a matter of concern to the United States. In the course of this, I did come across a number of letters directed at the upper echelon of the British Empire, that is, I think, to the King and Queen, or perhaps just to the King of England, and also to the Tsar of Russia, explaining that he was the inventor of a secret weapon which had rather remarkable properties, and that he would be interested in entering into a negotiation which would lead to a disclosure of what they were. Of course, I spent a good deal of time looking through these papers, trying to find out what the nature of this secret weapon was. I think I had, although I don't remember it so very accurately, an idea of what its properties were. It had the capability of acting at a great distance, of being destructive to flying objects and things of that kind at a place which was remote from the source. But nowhere in his technical papers did I find anything which revealed an explanation of just how such a device could operate.
I believe that you also opened another box, supposedly a secret weapon that he left at another hotel. Can you relate that story, please?
Yes, when I had substantially concluded my study on the following day, I think that was a Saturday morning, I was reminded by one of the two agents that there was a box being held as a security for an unpaid obligation, and that this box was an item of considerable value and may indeed itself be the secret weapon, that it was armed and therefore it probably was not touched.
Were you nervous doing this?
I found it a matter of a bit of concern. However, I realized that this had to be done, and so we taxied down to this hotel. The agents identified themselves and their credentials to the assistant manager of the hotel, who led us to a room. This room was essentially empty except for a table and a steel cabinet against the wall, which was opened. I think perhaps he opened it with a key. The cabinet itself was empty, except on one of the lower shelves was a package, a box, a rectangular box of ordinary size, which was wrapped in brown wrapping paper. It turned out to be a highly polished box with brass clasps, and it looked more like an instrument case. And after waiting a while and listening a while and remembering that it had been there for quite a few years, I think it had actually been there for about 5 years as a security, I opened it. It turned out to be a decade resistance box, manufactured by, I suspect, an American manufacturer, and something of value, but not great value, and certainly nothing ominous at all in its nature.
So after Dr. Tesla had let the world know of his secret weapon, after he had written letters to the King of England and to the Tsar of Russia, offering them this weapon at a time when both were engaged against the Germans in World War II, no evidence or papers were found which referred to any such secret weapon.
My report to Dr. Compton was that I saw no danger in releasing these papers and these relics to his heirs.
Miss Musar had arrived too late to know who had opened Dr. Tesla or what had been removed. And Dr. Trump had found nothing which he considered dangerous or a secret weapon. Tesla had been a naturalized American citizen for 54 years, so why were his papers seized by agents of the custodian of alien property? I suspect that governments other than those of the United States, England, and Russia were interested in the inventions of Dr. Tesla. From New York.
So, very interesting that he claims that there is nothing there of prominence, and yet we still have 20 trunks of notes missing regarding Tesla's work. Tribulation Saints throws in 10, says, Tesla is one of the greatest gifts of Serbs gave to the world, and the satanic elites destroyed him. Thanks for the stream, brother. God bless you. Well, thank you very much. And it is one of the ironies that he comes to America, he fulfills his dream, he becomes massively famous, massively successful, and nothing comes of it. He dies lonely in poverty. The government steals his notes. It's absolutely secretive of whatever they did with it, totally classified. We still don't fully know. I did find on the FBI website, there's like 3 PDFs regarding Tesla's research and work. But one of the papers declassified that looked like was going to be talking about Tesla's inventions and what was in them, I couldn't find. It's totally blacked out. It talks about Tesla, and then right when it talks about what he was working on or what they were interested in, it's all redacted. So you can't see. A lot of the other stuff is just talking about things he was working on or things he said, but someone else would have to go through. There are hundreds of pages of PDF files on the FBI website. I wasn't going to do all that for today's stream, but I thought it's worth letting you guys know. And so what do you guys think about John G. Trump? You think he's part of the cover-up? Because for me, after doing all the research, I'm fully convinced that the U.S. government clearly took some of Tesla's ideas and began implementing them for their own research. I do not trust John G. Trump and what he said, because it doesn't make any sense with what I'm about to show you, and the fact that he was literally in negotiations with the British royal family and the Soviet Union. So if we go here to 109, let's see, 109.50, 109. Okay, we'll begin here. This documentary is talking about how this was not just conspiracy. This was not just abstract. This was real stuff. Well, I'm glad all you guys agree. Yeah, 100% cover up. Very interesting how it's the Trump family again. It's almost just like the Epstein files. Anyways, check this out.
Controlling these lightning bolts and projecting them over long distances.
Tesla had experimented with this idea while at Colorado Springs. Now he intended to build it on a large scale. His plan was to charge small particles of tungsten or mercury, then accelerate them with lightning force through a special gun with one end open to the atmosphere. Tesla's death beam stirred the public's imagination when it was featured in a Superman cartoon the electro-euthanasia ray. But the idea was more than science fiction.
Tesla tried to sell this concept to various governments, England, the Soviet Union, and the United States, all Allied powers, and against Germany.
He offered his system to England for $30 million, and they entered negotiations. When Tesla demanded payment before sending the final plans, the deal fell through. The British attempted to build their own death beam, but the project was soon abandoned. As the Nazis surrounded Yugoslavia, Tesla attempted to sell a beam weapon system to his former country.
There should be needed 9 stations, 4 for Serbia, 3 for Croatia, and 2 for Slovenia, and it will protect our dearest homeland.
At this point, even Tesla's countrymen thought he was just a crazy old man. One day in 1937, Tesla started out from his hotel room to feed his pigeons. Suddenly, a few blocks from the hotel, he was hit by a taxi and thrown to the ground. 3 of his ribs were broken. He was 81 years old. Remembering what he did for their company, Westinghouse executives agreed to pay his room and board for the rest of his life. The inventor also received a small stipend from the Yugoslav government. During the Christmas season of 1942, Tesla's death was imminent. Again, he attempted to interest the United States in his beam weapon concept. At the recommendation of 2 government engineers, a meeting of high-level officials was scheduled at the White House for January 8, 1943, to consider his plans. But the meeting never took place.
Nikola Tesla, inventor of the Tesla coil, the induction motor, and hundreds of other electrical devices, died last night in his suite at the Hotel New Yorker.
Now, he dies the day before he's supposed to meet with the U.S. government and President Franklin Roosevelt. And this has led people to speculate that maybe they killed him, that maybe what they did was set up a meeting with him so he would prepare all his documents, so he had everything ready, and then they killed him the day before so that they could steal all of it. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but that is a theory, because what are the chances he dies the night before he's supposed to meet with the U.S. president to talk about selling his Teleforce technology?
On last Thursday night, here in our city of New York, a man who was 87 years of age died in his humble hotel room.
On January 10, 1943, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia of New York paid tribute to Tesla on the radio.
He died in poverty, but he was one of the most useful and successful men who ever lived. Were we to eliminate from our industrial world the result of Tesla's work, the wheels of industry would cease to turn, and our electric trains and cars would stop. Our towns would be dark, our mills and factories dead and idle. But Tesla is not dead. The important part of Tesla lives in his achievement, which is great and integral part of our civilization, of our daily lives, of our current war effort.
Ironically, only 5 months after Tesla's death, the United States Supreme Court declared elements of the Marconi patent invalid. The decision confirmed Nikola Tesla's patent priority for the fundamental technology of radio.
Unknown subjects, equipment, experiments, and research of Nikola Tesla, deceased, espionage.
Following Tesla's death, fears rapidly increased that he might have invented a powerful new weapon. FBI Special Agent in Charge, P.E. Foxworth, was called in to investigate. He had been informed that Tesla's papers were not secure.
Tesla is reported to have completed and perfected his experiments in the radio transmission of electrical power, commonly referred to as the death ray. A distant relative of Tesla, named Sava Kasanovich, is taking steps to get possession of these important documents and plans.
Tesla's nephew, Kosanovich, was an up-and-coming Yugoslav diplomat with suspected connections with the communists. He insisted that his uncle's effects be returned to Yugoslavia.
Kosanovich had asked the locksmith to come and open the safe, thinking there might be a testament, a will, in the safe.
A will was never located.
And there was a lot of talk then about secret weapons and negotiations with the USSR. There was all kind of talk, you know.
Shortly before his death, Tesla showed a delivery boy a box in his room that he said contained a powerful weapon.
A number of people called me and asked me, did I see in the hotel room a certain kind of a box, you know? They were looking for some secret contraption that Tesla had invented. I never saw anything like that.
Now remember, according to John G. Trump, when he saw this box, it was an instrument. It was an instrument. But we have on record the boy who spoke with Tesla before he died and said that this was related to one of his Teleforce technologies, that it was a weapon. So who do we believe? The boy who spoke with Tesla or John G. Trump?
The U.S. Office of Alien Property immediately seized all of Tesla's possessions until their ownership could be established.
There's every evidence that they did look through all his papers because the papers were not in order and certain things were missing.
All his technical papers on beam weapons were secretly microfilmed by U.S. military agents. On August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was exploded on Hiroshima, Japan. Soon after, the bomb would be in the Soviets' hands. During this period, copies of Tesla's papers on the beam weapon were shipped to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. There, a top-secret research program began called Project Nick to find a defense against nuclear missile attack.
Copies of some of his papers were sent to Wright-Patterson in 1945. Not to my facility, not even the predecessor of my facility, but to another part of the base for analysis. And then they vanished. Nobody seems to know what happened to them.
In 1952, Sava Kasanovich obtained permission from U.S. authorities to return Tesla's estate, still stored in New York, to the inventor's homeland.
I personally believe that the U.S. government may have overlooked some things of value in the Tesla papers before they were released to the Yugoslav government.
A Tesla museum was opened in Belgrade by Yugoslavia's president, Marshal Tito. But during the Cold War, the museum was off limits to Western scientists and scholars. Then, in 1960, Soviet Premier Khrushchev announced that the USSR had developed a powerful new weapon. There was concern in the U.S. that the Russians may have access to Tesla's missing papers on beam weapons in Belgrade and elsewhere.
It's possible that these papers on the particle beam weapon were obtained by the Soviet Union, but it wasn't the only copy. In other words, I think that the United States has always had Tesla's papers on particle beam weaponry.
An American beam weapon program began at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, but engineers could not produce an effective directed energy weapon.
I've always been a sort of a fan of Nikola Tesla, an admirer, and definitely he had the concept of a charged particle beam weapon back in the 1930s. I haven't a clue, to be quite honest, how he meant to actually do it.
In 1978, evidence suggested that the Soviets were attempting to build a huge beam weapon near Semipalatinsk in the Ukraine. Soon after, President Ronald Reagan announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, March 1983.
I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete.
Tesla's concept for a beam weapon defense shield was finally taken seriously by the United States to combat the destructive threat of atomic weapons. In spite of circumstantial evidence, there is no direct proof that Tesla's ideas or plans were used in the Strategic Defense Initiative. And even today, after decades of investment and research, scientists still disagree on whether beam weapons are realistic.
Basically, let me just make a short statement. That's all I'm really at liberty to say, is that a considerable amount of effort has taken place in the United States and in a number of other countries trying to get these things up to a real weaponizable status. Let me stop at that point.
No U.S. government archive has any record of Tesla's technical papers, which were copied immediately after his death. And what has become of Tesla's great dream to transmit electrical power without wires? This is the Navy and Air Force High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP, in Gacona, Alaska. The large antenna array is designed to beam high-energy microwaves into the ionosphere.
Tesla was his genius because way before anybody knew or even understood the physics of the Earth and what we call today the ionosphere, which is a layer of ionized particles about 80 kilometers above the Earth, he conceived it and he tried to use it to produce a variety of new concepts.
The HAARP project evolved from a patent filed in 1987 in which Tesla's work is referenced. It proposed using the ionosphere like an enormous electrical circuit to transmit power around the planet. It even described a means of changing the weather by superheating portions of the upper atmosphere with microwave energy.
Tesla proposed that it might be possible to modify the weather by using radio waves. I believe that this is impossible.
Ionospheric modification is still in its early experimental stages, but
again, when this documentary was going on, I suspect somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe it was more speculative, but now we know about weather manipulation. We know about HAARP and DARPA and how they modify the atmosphere, the ionosphere through these various technologies. Look at what's going on in Saudi Arabia, how they cause it to rain and all this different stuff. They create little grass utopias in the Middle East. Now this technology we know for a fact is being used. It's not some conspiracy theory.
Microwave technology has already made it possible to transmit wireless power with the use of satellites.
We go to Alaska, and in Alaska there is natural gas. In order to send it somewhere, you have to create a pipeline. That's very expensive. So we said, all right, let's go into Alaska, create microwaves from the natural gas, send them to a satellite at a particular geosynchronous orbit, put a reflector there, and send it to Japan. And in Japan now, you get the antenna, which transforms these microwaves into 60 hertz, and you get electricity. So you make essentially Tesla's dream.
The scientific man does not aim at an immediate result. He does not expect that his advanced ideas will be readily taken up. His work is like that of the planter for the future. His duty is to lay the foundation for those who are to come and point the way.
He was special. I mean, he was unique. He was unusual in all sorts of ways. And if we are to understand our own creativity, our own ability to invent, there's an awful lot to be learned by studying the way in which he created.
The day when we shall know exactly what electricity is will chronicle an event probably greater, more important than any other recorded in the history of the human race. Then it will be a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very real work of nature. See the excitement coming.
So, what do you guys think? That pretty much does it for most of my stream. In fact, actually, let's, now that we're towards the end of the stream, I'd like to hear what your guys' favorite astrophysicist has to say. But if you want a little bonus content, you got to help me out here. You got to, somebody support the stream, and I'll add a little bonus content, which may get copyrighted. So I'm taking a chance here, but I'd love to play this little section of Neil deGrasse Tyson, totally dismissive about everything that we just watched regarding Tesla. Putt Putt said, very informative. Thank you. Yeah, I hope it was informative and brought some interesting perspective to it. Again, the whole Orthodox angle, there's really almost nothing online about Tesla and Orthodoxy. I found one video that was arguing for him to be canonized as a saint, but it was just like an old video with text, something of that nature. Nathan Slippery says, oink, oink. Thank you very much, Pay Piggy. God bless you, Nathan Slippy. I always say Slippery. Slippy. Nathan Slippy. Thank you very much, brother. Over on the Dono chat, Serbian Slav Squat threw in 10 and said, hey, DPH, at the end of the stream, before you sign off, search and play ERB Tesla vs. Edison on YouTube. It's a 2 to 3 minute rap battle and is awesome. ERB Tesla vs. Edison. Is this thing copyrighted? I will play... September 1991, USA placed an arms embargo on Yugoslavia. 1993, they start building HARP program. Legit sus. Yeah, well, I covered the Kosovo war, which is all tied with that. A little bit later in the 90s. Silver Ogre says, why should we listen to the diversity higher about Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. BJ Ryan throws in $20. Thank you so much, BJ Ryan, on Dono Chat. Says, happy Memorial Day weekend, DPH. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you as well. Here in Indiana, it's all about the race. This is race weekend. although it's raining all weekend. I don't know how exactly they're going to race, but this is supposed to be the Indy 500 weekend. I think it's going to get rained out. It's probably not going to, the race isn't going to take place till next week because it's been raining like cats and dogs here in Indiana. Tribulation Saints throws in 5, says, not sure if you covered this, but Tesla's father was an Orthodox. Oh, yeah, I covered all that. His father, his grandfather, his uncle, and all 3 sisters married Orthodox priests. So, absolutely. Thank you very much, Tribulation Saints. And Nathaniel sends in a generous $20, says, well, I have quite a few things to say about the government, Vanderbilt and Edison, but I don't think you should let me post it. I know, isn't it? It's an irony that all of Tesla's technologies essentially got adopted and integrated into the system that he wanted to fight. Right? Think about all the AC currents. As I said, every factory, every server, every major city is all built on Tesla's technology. And he wanted to give it for free. And we're all paying for it. Every time you pay for your electrical bill, just think the U.S. government. Nathaniel says, I'm from Southeast Indiana, and yeah, the rain has been nuts. Oh, okay. Nathaniel, I didn't know you're a Hoosier. Shout out to all my fellow Hoosiers out there. I don't know if Slowboy Whiteboard's in the chat. She's also a fellow Hoosier. So many of the credited inventors of things throughout history weren't actually the original inventors. I know. Tesla's one of the few that actually did invent his inventions. I mean, I think Edison also stole motion pictures from someone else. He's credited with, founding motion picture, but I believe it was someone else that actually founded it or created it, and he basically stole it from him, got all the credit for it. Larry Bird is a national hero, or at least a state hero here in Indiana for sure. Did he just say Slow Boy is actually a slow girl? Yeah, Slow Boy Whiteboard is a woman. I think most of the people in the chat knew that. Slow Boy Whiteboard is a woman. Yeah, I like money. Thomas Edison. I mean, you can't dive into Tesla's life and not feel immense anger at people like J.P. Morgan and Thomas Edison. So, let me see here. All right, should we play the video here of Joe Rogan? I'm afraid it's going to get... I think it's going to get flagged, but we can go ahead and try it since we're at the end of the stream here. They robbed us of such a bright future, but God's plan is above all. They did. I mean, if we lived in the world that Tesla wanted to create, we wouldn't be paying for energy right now. Daniel says, wasn't Hollywood founded specifically to avoid paying Edison royalties to use the camera he intended? I am not sure about that. I've never looked into that. Oh, we got a fellow Hoosier. Paul said, from Richmond, Indiana. Indeed, the rain does suck. Yeah, it's been raining like crazy here. Serbian Slav Squad said, the video I suggested, Epic Rap Battles, Tesla versus Edison, doesn't appear to be copyrighted. Not sure about the Rogan video, to be honest. Obese Turtle, you're in Greenwood? Are you in Greenwood, Indiana? Another fellow Hoosier. So many Hoosiers in the chat tonight. I had no idea. Okay, well, I am not familiar with this epic rap battle. Let me pull it up. Epic rap battle. Tesla versus Edison. 50 million views 13 years ago. It's definitely going to get copyrighted because of the music. Okay, we'll do this last. I do want to show you guys. We'll just play like a couple minutes of Neil deGrasse Tyson shoo-shooing Nikola Tesla.
Tesla and electricity. What did you think about Tesla's initial idea that Westinghouse shot down to sort of broadcast electricity so that people could just pull it out of the air?
Yeah, so the people in the Nikola Tesla fan club somehow feel that he got wronged in his life, okay?
Yeah, he did get wronged in his life. What do you mean?
And surely some of that is true with regard to
patents.
His business acumen and patents and who owns the patent and who does he have good business sense? Is he as savvy or as sneaky, whatever other words you might apply to Edison, all right? So I get that. But his contributions to electromagnetism are real and recognized in the world of physics. Like I said, there's a unit of electromagnetism named after him. So don't come crying to me and say he was not recognized by my people, okay? He's recognized. He had some idea.
Neil's people are the ones that put on fake breasts and claim to be women. I think those are the people he's talking about.
Is that we're a little out there, and out there on a level where it almost certainly would have not worked. And here's why. Okay? Electromagnetic energy is communicating between us. I see you. That's because visible light is reflecting off of your scalp, okay, to me. It's reflecting off of my nose back to you. You can ask, how much energy is in that? Well, not much. There's not much energy in a visible light photons. If you stay there long enough, you might feel a little warmth from it. But no, you're not going to drive a car with that energy. You're not going to run a motor with it. Okay. Well, of what good is it? Oh, you know what we found? We can use electromagnetic radio waves, which are the lowest form of electromagnetic energy, lowest energy level of all of it. We can use radio waves not to transmit energy. That's not the point of it. The point is to transmit information. And information became what characterized the modern era. And that's why in the 1950s and 60s, when everyone is imagining flying cars and motorized sidewalks, everything is running on energy because they're thinking energy is going to be free in the future. But what they didn't figure was that information would be free or easy to transmit and to generate and to store and to delete. And whereas the energy that would take to move things and to drive things, that would be a problem. No one saw that coming. Nobody saw that coming. So as your photons get higher and higher energy, yes, you can start doing things with them. You get X-rays and gamma rays. But that's not what Tesla was referring to. He was talking about moving radio waves through the space that would charge things up. You can't pack sufficient energy in your radio wave to do anything we need to do mechanically.
Currently.
Well,
but back then, would it be sufficient?
There might have been something you could have done with your radio waves because the needs were no, I take that back. That was the height of the Industrial Revolution. That was the age of the machine, the age of the giant turbines. Radio energy is not touching that.
Right, but wasn't it possible that he was considering it for things like radios or light bulbs or household items? Would it be possible to use that power for that?
So now what happens? So the radio waves, if you had enough power in radio waves to generate a light bulb, to power a light bulb, well, through the air? Are you standing in the way of this? This energy has pathways. We now send energy through wires. Because you're not standing in the way of the wire. The wire is buried. The wire has insulation. The wire's on a high.
Now, here's the funny thing about this is Tesla was actually hired by a public school in New York City to put electric energy into the classroom because he believed that it amplified people's intelligence. So he believed that electrical energy at low levels could actually help heal the body because he believed it be a pure form of energy. And it's ironic that Tesla lived to 86, 87 years old and was surrounded by these radio waves that Neil deGrasse Tyson's claims would damage you and hurt you, and it's problematic. We know that he was able to light light bulbs without wires from a distance in Colorado Springs. He proved that. We have historical documentation that people saw the experiments work. So And also, he was utilizing the ionosphere. He was utilizing the magnetic field of the Earth for the advancement of these things. Whenever Neil deGrasse Tyson comes, he's like one of those people that when they speak, you almost just want to be, whatever he says, the opposite side, in my opinion, is probably more likely. So whenever I hear him speak and he's talking and dismissing Tesla's technology, dismissing the fact that he was dealt the short end of the stick in his life. He absolutely was, dude. What are you talking about? JP Morgan pulled the funding. He died in poverty. JP Morgan convinced no one to invest in him from like the 1916 forward. What are you talking about? So I don't know. Whatever Neil deGrasse Tyson says, I tend to believe the opposite. I'm sorry, Serbian Slav Squat. I'm not going to take the risk on a 50 million view video with music. Music gets flagged every single time. So I apologize, brother, but I'm not going to play the video. Anyways, I just want to thank everyone for the support tonight. It doesn't look like we're going to reach our super chat goal. For some reason, it wasn't calculating correctly over here on YouTube. It's only showing 13 out of 50. But anyways, I got a stream tomorrow with the Collins brothers. We'll be going over some of the UFO disclosure. I may do a Logos news stream tomorrow. And then Sunday and Monday, I got to prep for my MK Ultra stream Monday. Tuesday, we have a men's meeting over in the Logos Academy. If anyone is interested, please join us. We would love to have any of you fellas join us over at the Logos Academy. We are going to be going over a lot of the news and having an open discussion this coming Tuesday, getting into whatever people want to discuss. And if you guys haven't got my book, Return to Babylon from Adam to Antichrist, I highly encourage it. So what time tomorrow, Doc? I'm not sure. I was thinking of possibly doing a Logos news stream early in the afternoon. And then the Collins brothers, I'll be live at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 o'clock their time. So we'll be doing that tomorrow evening. I may try to get in 2 streams tomorrow. It's been a long time since I've done a 2 streamer in the same day. So anyway, Serbian Slav Squat said, thanks for the fire stream. Thank you, brother, for the support. And thank you all for being here. I truly, truly am appreciative of all you guys who support my work and my streams. Seriously. I love you guys. Austin Tertulio says, keep those super chats rolling in, gang. Let's see. I have 24 on StreamYard. So I have 24 super chats of the 50. So we're basically halfway there. I don't think Jason Castle is going to be coming through and saving your guys' butts again. I mean, Jason Castle essentially purchased today's stream, and he's not in the chat. So I was hoping to be able to hit our super chat goal, and I could prep another sponsor stream, be it the Norman Conquest, the Great Northern War, as Austin or the Snaggle Beast was wanting. But anyways, I'm going to hop off here, guys. I'm going to go spend time with my wife. Thank you all so much for the support. God bless you all. I hope you found this stream useful, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. As always, until then, God bless.